You wake to the pale, diffused light filtering through the narrow window of the barracks. The sun hangs low, barely brushing the wooden boards with its glow. A faint scent of straw clings to the air, mingling with the musty odor of aged timber and the distant smoke that lingers from last night's hearth. You shift beneath the coarse wool blanket, feeling its rough texture against your skin, and slowly stretch your limbs. Each movement releases the stiffness gathered overnight, a quiet loosening of your joints. The room is hushed. Only the occasional creak of the floorboards and a faint rustle behind the thin curtain suggest the presence of others. Your hand brushes the edge of the blanket, tracing its frayed threads. You inhale, noticing subtle hints of another's presence. A faint soap aroma, the lingering scent of wool, a trace of dried tobacco. Behind the curtain, soft movements occur without sound, delicate adjustments of blankets or folds of clothing. You breathe in, letting each note of scent settle on your senses, a layered mixture that is at once comforting and grounding. The curtain sways slightly as if acknowledging your awareness, though no one moves to meet your gaze. The floorboards beneath your bare feet are uneven. You step lightly, listening to the faint creaks echoing in the room. Tiny flecks of dust drift lazily in the sunlight that cuts across the straw-strewn floor. You follow their slow spirals with your eyes, observing the subtle patterns of movement. Each mote seems to insist on its own rhythm, suspended in the golden light. A soft smile brushes your lips, not from amusement, but from a quiet satisfaction in noticing the persistent, unhurried nature of these small details. Near the wall, a tin cup rests on a low wooden table, its surface dull with age. You pick it up, feeling the cool metal against your palm. Sunlight glances off its rim, creating a fleeting sparkle. The cup is unremarkable, yet entirely practical, its weight and form familiar. You set it down again, noting the faint thud as it meets the wood. The sound is soft, punctuating the calm atmosphere. Behind the curtain, a mirror rhythm occurs. Another hand lifts, sets, and adjusts. The faint echo a quiet dialogue of motion. The straw beneath you yields to your weight, shifting slightly with each movement. You kneel and adjust a small patch, smoothing the uneven piles with gentle pressure. The coarse fibers rub against your skin in a subtle tickle. Behind the curtain, similar adjustments are made. A blanket straightened, a bundle of straw lifted, a cloth rearranged. These tiny actions, performed without words, create an unspoken symmetry, a quiet coordination that fills the morning with soft, unnoticed energy. The wooden beams above are rough and darkened from years of smoke and time. Each knot and groove tells a story of hands long gone, shaping and shaping again, leaving their silent mark on the structure. You trace the patterns with your eyes, imagining the steady rhythm of previous laborers, the repetition of hammer strikes and nails set into place. The beams are witnesses to centuries of mornings like this one, slow and deliberate. You feel an odd satisfaction in the continuity, in participating in the same measured cadence. Air moves slowly through the barracks. Each inhale brings the warmth of the sun, the scent of straw and wood, and faint echoes of distant preparations beyond the walls. Each exhale releases subtle tension you may not have realized you carried. The curtain quivers lightly as another presence shifts, soft creaks marking time. You inhale once more, exhale deliberately, and notice the gradual alignment of your body with the calm rhythm of the room. Simplicity defines the space. A few objects, a tin cup, a folded cloth, perhaps a wooden comb tucked neatly in a corner, serve their purpose quietly, without fuss. The curtain moves again, slight, gentle. You adjust the blanket, smooth a patch of straw, shift your weight. These small, repeated gestures ground you, filling the room with steady, understated patterns. The presence behind the curtain mirrors these rhythms, and together you occupy the same space with calm, unspoken awareness. Light shifts slowly, brushing across the uneven floor, catching tiny dust motes in its passage. The air carries warmth and faint scents, a combination that is both stimulating and soothing. The straw crunches softly underfoot as you move, each step deliberate. Behind the curtain, subtle gestures continue. Someone brushing a blanket, adjusting clothing, settling into the rhythm of waking. You move in synchrony, not by conscious intent, but through quiet attunement, the shared language of small, gentle motions. By the time you are fully awake, the room is a chorus of textures and soft sounds. Sunlight glimmering on the metal cup, dust motes drifting through the air, straw yielding beneath careful hands, and faint movements behind the curtain. You pause, observing the patterns, noticing the subtleties of presence and the gentle flow of morning. There is no urgency, no drama, only the deliberate, calm unfolding of the day in the barracks, the quiet companionship of shared space, and the subtle rhythms that carry you through the first moments of wake. You rise slowly, the straw beneath your feet brushing against your ankles, as you step toward the small basin tucked in the corner. Its wooden frame is worn, softened by years of careful use, and the faint scent of soap lingers in the air. You tilt the basin slightly, noticing the subtle reflection of light dancing on the water's surface. The ripple of the liquid responds to your hand, gentle and predictable, as though it waits quietly for your attention. Behind the curtain, a similar motion occurs. A hand adjusts a piece of cloth, smooths a fold, and brushes against the wooden frame. The movements are distinct yet harmonious, a muted choreography of morning rituals. You cup the water in your hands, letting the coolness settle over your skin. The sensation is crisp, invigorating, yet gentle. Tiny droplets cling to your fingers and palms, catching the light as they fall back into the basin with soft, measured splashes. You lean closer, the faint sound of water lapping against the basin edges filling the stillness. Behind the curtain, another figure moves in parallel, fingers tracing over fabric, small adjustments made with care, maintaining balance in the subtle tension of the room. Each motion, though silent, resonates quietly, forming a rhythm you can feel as much as you can hear. The air is slightly cooler near the window, carrying the scent of dew and earth from the small courtyard beyond the barracks walls. You inhale slowly, letting the fragrance settle into your lungs, imagining the dampness of grass and the faint, earthy aroma of wooden timbers heated by the morning sun. The straw on the floor offers a soft contrast under your feet, yielding and gentle, a reminder of the simplicity and tactility of your surroundings. Behind the curtain, a light brush of cloth against straw produces a faint whispering sound, barely audible, yet grounding in its quiet repetition. You reach for a small towel, rough against your skin but functional, and begin drying your hand. The coarse fibers catch lightly on your fingertips as you move in slow, deliberate strokes, each pass leaving your hands just dry enough. You notice the subtle interplay of textures, the smoothness of your skin, the dampness of the water, and the rough tug of the towel fibers. Each sensation layers gently, a subtle symphony of touch that carries you through the simplicity of the morning. From behind the curtain, faint shifting sounds accompany your own, a companion in the quiet, muted world of early hours. The basin, now settled and still, reflects fragments of the room, light glinting off the wooden walls, a hint of the curtain swaying softly, the straw scattered in gentle disarray across the floor. You adjust the basin slightly, aligning it with the sunlight that filters through the narrow window, observing how the light forms patterns across the water's surface. Each ripple and reflection draws your eyes in, capturing the movement of air and shadow as it drifts slowly across the space. Behind the curtain, another pair of hands adjusts a blanket, smooths a fold, a mirror to your own careful motion. A gentle draft stirs the room, brushing against your skin and causing the curtain to quiver lightly. The motion is subtle, almost imperceptible, yet it draws your attention, reminding you of the continuous flow of air and energy through the barrack. You lean slightly toward the window, feeling the cooler morning air kiss your cheeks and run along your arm. Behind the curtain, the movement mirrors your own attentiveness, a small shared rhythm of life, calm and understated, filling the space without words. You bend to retrieve a simple comb, wooden and worn, its teeth smooth from years of careful use. Brushing your hair, You note the resistance of the strands, the soft tugging sensation, the faint rustle that accompanies each stroke. The repetition is soothing, a steady, unhurried pattern that marks the start of your day. Behind the curtain, you imagine similar actions, mirrored yet independent, hair being smoothed, a piece of clothing adjusted, a blanket folded just so. The room hums with this quiet choreography, a language of repeated gestures and shared attentiveness. The light shifts imperceptibly, sliding across the walls and floor, highlighting small imperfections and textures you might otherwise miss. You pause, noticing the way shadows stretch along the wooden beams and how the sunlight warms the straw in patches, each area holding its own gentle warmth. You take a slow breath, letting your attention settle on these subtle variations in temperature, texture, and light. Behind the curtain, another presence aligns with these rhythms, a mirrored awareness of the subtle changes that the morning brings. In this shared quiet, you feel the day beginning without urgency. The water, now calm and still, reflects faint patterns of light. The straw underfoot crinkles softly as you move, small sounds blending seamlessly with the rustle behind the curtain and the gentle movement of the folds of fabric. Each gesture, each sound, each sensory detail layers upon the next, forming a soft, continuous hum of morning life. You notice the minute details, the glint of light on a wooden edge, the warmth settling into the floorboards, the faint scent of soap and straw mingling together. With each motion, you are aware not just of yourself, but of the subtle companionship that the barracks provide. Behind the curtain, another presence moves in tandem with yours, though independently. The awareness of shared space, of simultaneous yet distinct rhythms, brings a gentle comfort. You adjust a blanket, smooth a patch of straw, run your fingers along the basin edge, gestures small enough to be almost invisible, yet profoundly grounding. The early light continues to shift, the air remains calm, and the room hums quietly with the simple, patient acts that mark the beginning of another day. You step further into the morning light, the wooden floorboards beneath your feet creaking ever so softly as you move toward the hearth. Its blackened bricks are cool to the touch, their surfaces mottled with decades of soot and warmth, carrying a faint, familiar scent of wood smoke and slow fires. You notice a faint curl of smoke still lingering from last night's embers, drifting upward in lazy spirals that dissolve into the high ceiling. Behind the curtain, a similar motion occurs, a hand brushing against fabric, straightening a fold, the soft scrape of straw beneath a shifting weight. The subtle interplay of motion and stillness fills the room with a measured rhythm, a quiet acknowledgement of each other's presence without words. You reach for a small iron kettle resting on the hearth, feeling its cool handle against your fingers before raising it gently to tilt the spout. The water inside glimmers, reflecting the pale morning light, and you hear the faint, soothing swish as it moves. The sound is small but distinct, marking the passage of time in a gentle, steady pulse. You pour the water carefully into a basin, watching how it cascades in a thin, shimmering stream, disturbing the surface just enough to catch the sunlight. Behind the curtain, the soft shuffle of movement is similar, another set of small actions performed with care, mirrored in rhythm though not in exact timing. The scent of damp straw and heated wood combines with the faint metallic tang of the kettle, creating a rich, earthy fragrance that fills your senses as you pour water. You inhale slowly, letting the smell settle and ground you in the moment. Your eyes follow the droplets that scatter lightly over the basin rim, sparkling like tiny prisms. Behind the curtain, you imagine similar attention to detail, hands arranging clothing, adjusting bedding, brushing a lock of hair away from a face. The room holds these small gestures like a soft chorus, each contributing to a shared but unspoken harmony. You dip a cloth into the water, feeling the temperature settle pleasantly against your skin. The fibers absorb the liquid slowly, ringing softly between your fingers, producing a quiet, wet rustle. You begin to wipe down the wooden surface of the small table near the hearth, the gentle friction creating a comforting, repetitive sound that blends seamlessly with the faint creak of floorboards. Behind the curtain, other sounds soft shifting, rustling, The quiet exhalation of someone moving form a subtle accompaniment, creating a layered auditory texture that is calming in its simplicity. The light continues to change, moving across the walls and illuminating the textures of the room. You notice small imperfections in the wood, tiny grooves and scratches, the way the grain twists and turns, a pattern made over years of use. You run your hand along the edge of the table, feeling the raised fibers and the smooth dips, appreciating the quiet intricacy of the materials surrounding you. Behind the curtain, similar attention is paid to details invisible to the casual eye. The fold of fabric, the tilt of a blanket, the precise alignment of a small personal item. Each motion is minor, yet together they weave a tapestry of shared awareness. You step toward the window and pull aside the rough linen curtain, letting more light spill across the room. The brightness is soft, filtered through the fibers, creating warm patches on the straw-covered floor. You can see the courtyard beyond, the dewy grass shimmering faintly, the wooden posts of the outer fence outlined in pale gold, a thin tendril of mist rising from the earth. Behind the curtain, you imagine another pair of eyes observing similar details, the gentle play of light and shadow forming a quiet dialogue between two presences in the same space. The kettle now rests beside the hearth, the water inside steaming slightly, forming delicate swirls that rise and dissipate slowly. You can feel the heat radiating gently against your palms as you set it down, the warmth radiating into the surrounding space. You adjust a piece of cloth on the table, smoothing it carefully, noticing how the fibers shift and settle under your touch. Behind the curtain, small movements continue, a hand brushing a stray strand of hair, a sleeve adjusted, a blanket tucked more snugly around a shoulder. The harmony of repeated gestures creates a sense of calm continuity, each act echoing softly in the shared space. You pick up a small mug, rough and slightly warped from years of use, and run your fingers along its rim. The surface is cool and matte, roughened by countless hands before yours. You dip it briefly into the steaming water, letting the warmth seep into your skin, and then raise it to your lips. The steam curls lightly around your fingers, the sensation delicate and grounding. Behind the curtain, faint, mirrored movements occur, hands brushing against fabric, shifting slightly, creating a subtle, almost musical accompaniment to your own small, deliberate actions. You lean slightly forward to observe the kettle once more, noticing the tiny ripples forming on the water surface, each disturbance gentle and measured. Your eyes follow the shifting light as it dances across the room, moving along the walls, the floor, and the straw. You inhale the combined scents of water, wood, and straw, allowing them to anchor you in the moment. Behind the curtain, another presence engages in similar quiet attentiveness, the echo of awareness threading between your actions and theirs without ever needing articulation. In these shared movements, the morning continues with a patient, soothing rhythm, water poured, surfaces cleaned, light observed, air inhaled, each motion small yet deliberate, a meditation of simple tactile acts. Behind the curtain, the mirroring presence adds to the tranquility, a silent companion participating in the calm, unhurried rituals of early day. The room hums softly with repetition and care, a gentle pulse of life contained in its quiet, understated form. You pause to rest your hands on the table, feeling the grain beneath your fingertips, and notice the gentle warmth seeping from the straw below. Behind the curtain, similar pauses occur, mirrored and harmonious, adding layers to the subtle symphony of movements. The kettle remains in place. The light continues its slow journey across the room, and you breathe deeply, appreciating the continuity and calm of the moment, the steady unfolding of a morning built on patience, attention, and quiet presence. You move toward the small wooden door leading out to the courtyard, the hinges creaking in a low, familiar tone as you push it open just enough to let a thin sliver of fresh air drift inside. The scent is crisp with dew, the faint tang of earth and straw filling your senses. You notice the dampness of the grass beneath your sandals, each blade cool and slightly sticky against your toes. A gentle breeze shifts through the trees beyond the fence, rustling leaves in a soft, repetitive rhythm. Behind the curtain, a shadow moves, careful and deliberate, as if to not disturb the fragile morning hush. Yet their presence is as tangible as the air itself. The sunlight has begun its slow climb, brushing over the courtyard with a muted golden hue that softens the edges of the wooden posts and the low stone walls. You follow the path of light as it glides over uneven ground where small clumps of moss cling to cracks in stone, a reminder of the years that have passed with quiet constancy. Behind the curtain, the faint rustle of fabric and the soft creak of furniture signal the mirrored attention to detail. A blanket straightened, a piece of clothing smoothed, a small ritual repeated without ceremony or announcement. You bend slightly to examine a patch of dew-laden moss growing near the corner of the courtyard. Tiny droplets cling to the tiny green tendrils, catching the light and breaking it into miniature prisms. You extend a finger, brushing one droplet free, feeling the cool moisture against your skin. The act is slow, deliberate, a small connection between your hands and the natural world. Behind the curtain, another presence engages similarly in attentive tactile movements, folding fabric, adjusting bedding, hands gliding over surfaces with care. Though separate, these motions are rhythmically intertwined in the calm hum of the morning. You hear the distant sound of a rooster crowing, a low, measured call that stretches across the courtyard and is swallowed gently by the still air. Each crow is spaced with intervals long enough to feel like a pulse, a heartbeat marking the slow passage of time. You inhale deeply, noticing the mixture of scents, damp earth, straw, and the faint hint of smoke from the hearth. The sensory layering is subtle yet rich, filling the space with quiet reassurance. Behind the curtain, soft movements, small shifts, a brush against cloth form a silent dialogue, a companionable echo of your own measured attentiveness. You pick up a small wicker basket resting on a low wooden bench, its fibers rough yet pliable, warmed slightly by the sunlight. You run your fingers along the rim, tracing the pattern of woven strands, appreciating the patience required to create something so simple yet enduring. Inside, a few sprigs of fresh herbs lie, their aroma faintly peppered with earthiness. You lift one to your nose, inhaling softly, and notice the delicate curl of its leaves and the subtle texture along its stem. Behind the curtain, a mirrored hand might adjust a small bundle, a piece of cloth, or a personal object with similar care, each movement understated yet purposeful. The kettle remains on the hearth, steam now curling more gently than before, dissipating in thin, translucent ribbons. You glance back toward the hearth, noting how the light catches the curling vapor, softening it into a gentle haze that moves lazily toward the ceiling. Behind the curtain, similar awareness manifests. A hand brushing against a sleeve, a slight shift in weight, motions slow enough to be almost imperceptible, yet contributing to the shared quiet of the room. The interplay of attention and motion, though unseen by one another, weaves a sense of connection, subtle and continuous. You step lightly across the courtyard, feeling the uneven stones beneath your feet, the way each stone dips and rises under your weight. The texture is uneven, rough against the soft skin of your soles, yet grounding, comforting in its natural irregularity. The air is still cool, carrying the muted scent of early bloom and wet earth. Behind the curtain, the small repeated gestures continue, the quiet adjustment of surroundings, the attentiveness to detail forming a parallel rhythm to your own movements. You pause near the low stone wall, looking over the edge where moss and grass tumble downward in gentle cascades, a natural softness cushioning the sharpness of the stone. You notice how the sunlight plays on the surface, highlighting the green hues and casting tiny shadows that shift imperceptibly with the breeze. Behind the curtain, another set of eyes may observe similar subtleties. The interplay of light and shadow, the texture of material, the gentle movement of fabric in a soft draft. The room and courtyard are alive with these small, understated details, connecting you invisibly to a mirrored presence. A slight rustle of leaves draws your attention, and you turn your gaze toward the trees lining the fence. Their branches sway lazily, the leaves brushing against each other, producing a delicate, almost musical whisper. You inhale the sound along with the scent of bark and morning moisture, feeling the calm seep into your chest, steadying your thoughts. Behind the curtain, mirrored gestures continue. Perhaps the adjustment of a blanket, a small fold of clothing, movements deliberate and slow, contributing to the quiet choreography of shared existence. The basket in your hands rests lightly against your hip as you continue to survey the courtyard. Every step is measured, every movement deliberate. You notice small details, the way light glints off dew, how shadows stretch and shorten in subtle, imperceptible shifts, and the faint patterns left in damp earth by the night's passage. Behind the curtain, small, purposeful actions create their own rhythm. The alignment of objects, the soft adjustment of materials, a hand gliding over familiar textures. Together, these minor acts form a gentle symphony, a quiet meditation on care and observation, grounding you fully in the measured, calm morning. You begin to walk along the edge of the courtyard, the soft, uneven cobblestones pressing lightly against your feet. Each stone carries a history of countless steps before yours, worn smooth in places, rough and pitted in others. The weight of your body shifts subtly with every movement, a quiet rhythm syncing with the distant rustle of leaves and the occasional bird song. Behind the curtain, a soft shadow moves, deliberate and gentle, attending to unseen details with quiet care. You are not aware of each other, yet your motions mirror, creating an invisible harmony across the space. The morning sun climbs slowly, brushing golden light over the low stone walls and wooden beams that outline the courtyard. You notice how the warmth diffuses softly, scattering across the surfaces and mellowing the cooler tones of moss and earth. You reach down to touch a patch of dew-laden grass, feeling the cool wetness cling lightly to your fingers before dripping back to the ground. The delicate tension of moisture, the faint resistance of the blades, engages your attention fully, anchoring you in the sensory present. Behind the curtain, the mirrored presence moves with similar attentiveness, hands gliding over smooth cloth or folding soft material, each gesture as deliberate as your own tactile exploration. You pause to breathe, inhaling the combined aroma of damp earth, fresh grass, and faint traces of smoke from the hearth. Each inhalation draws you further into the calm of the morning, the quiet rhythm of your heartbeat matching the gentle sway of the trees. Your eyes trace patterns in the courtyard, the shadows shifting beneath the fence, the uneven clumps of moss hugging the stone walls, the way sunlight flickers across the uneven surface of a well-worn bench. Behind the curtain, motions echo these attentions, though unseen. A blanket adjusted, a bundle of herbs aligned, the small, satisfying symmetry of everyday acts. Your fingers trail along the rough edge of the low stone wall as you step closer, feeling the uneven texture against your palm. Tiny flecks of moss, soft and damp, cling to your skin, leaving a subtle imprint as you pass. You look over the top, noticing the subtle interplay of light and shadow in the grass beyond, the delicate dance of movement as the wind brushes the leaves. Behind the curtain, a hand smooths the folds of a blanket, arranging objects with quiet precision, a mirror of your tactile engagement with the space. A soft clucking sound reaches your ears, small and understated, emanating from the corner of the courtyard where a few hens wander. Their feathers glint faintly in the morning sun, ruffled slightly by the breeze. You crouch to observe them, noting the way each bird moves with a measured purpose, pecking lightly at the scattered grains, tilting its head in attentive curiosity. Behind the curtain, similar small motions unfold. An object shifted slightly, a curtain pulled with gentle care, the deliberate movements of someone tending to their own environment in parallel with yours. The wooden bench near the wall bears the faint imprint of past activity, subtle grooves, tiny chips along the edges, and a warm sheen where hands have rested. You run your hand along its surface, appreciating the texture and the history it carries. Each line, each worn edge, speaks quietly of repeated, gentle touch. Behind the curtain, a mirrored presence moves with similar attentiveness, smoothing a blanket, arranging herbs, gliding fingers over the surface of a tabletop. These parallel gestures, small and unspoken, create a quiet, unifying rhythm across the separated spaces. You lift the basket in your hand again, feeling its weight and texture, noting the rough fibers against your skin. Inside, the fresh herbs carry a muted aroma, a gentle contrast to the earthiness of the courtyard. You arrange them slowly, taking time to consider each sprig's position, its curl and shape, aligning them with deliberate attention. Behind the curtain, hands perform similar actions, arranging small objects with careful deliberation. The space is filled with understated movement, a silent choreography of mindfulness that extends invisibly between you. The gentle sway of branches overhead creates shifting patterns of light and shadow across the stones. You pause to observe these patterns, noticing how the sunlight catches on each leaf, scattering soft reflections across the courtyard. Each movement is imperceptibly slow, measured, as if the entire courtyard breathes with the rhythm of the day. Behind the curtain, mirrored attention continues. The slow fold of a blanket, the subtle adjustment of a bundle of cloth, a hand brushing lightly over familiar textures. The space hums with quiet, attentive energy. A light breeze carries the faint scent of flowering herbs, mingling with the earthy aroma of wet soil. You close your eyes briefly, allowing the smell to anchor you in the present, filling your senses with calm and familiarity. Each inhalation is deliberate, slow, and grounding. Behind the curtain, soft motions echo this attention to sensory detail. Fingers tracing the edge of fabric, a small object lifted and replaced with care. Though separate, the two of you exist in a shared rhythm, a quiet, attentive presence that occupies the same air and light. You continue along the path, stepping carefully over uneven stones, feeling the way each foot meets the ground. The tactile feedback of rough stone beneath your soles is oddly comforting, a steady, predictable sensation in a world of soft rustling leaves and shifting light. Behind the curtain, subtle gestures maintain the same gentle continuity. Hands arranging, smoothing, adjusting, each motion deliberate and slow. The courtyard and the room behind the curtain are filled with this quiet, measured energy, a calm, unspoken connection forged in attentiveness to the small and immediate. You hear the faint scrape of wood against stone as you shift the small stool closer to the wall, testing its balance with a gentle press of your weight. The sound is soft, muted by distance and the early morning haze that hangs across the courtyard. Your hands linger on the stool's surface, appreciating the smoothness worn from years of use. Behind the curtain, a similar scrape echoes, subtle, deliberate, almost imperceptible, matching the rhythm of your own movements. The parallel actions create a quiet harmony, as if the day itself is moving in gentle synchronization. The morning light deepens, spilling more fully across the courtyard. Warmth seeps into the air, touching the tops of the wooden beams, highlighting faint carvings and notches that mark time and use. You breathe in slowly, noticing the mingling of scents, damp stone, faint traces of ash from the hearth, and the lingering sweetness of crushed herbs left from yesterday. Behind the curtain, your companion, unseen but sensed, performs similar attentions. The careful alignment of cloth, the soft brush of fingers over smooth wood, a slow, deliberate hand that mirrors your own focus. You pause by the low fountain at the center of the courtyard, its water murmuring softly as it laps against the carved basin. The sound is subtle but constant, a soothing backdrop to your movements. You watch the slight ripples catch the sunlight, sparkling faintly as they move in endless, gentle repetition. Behind the curtain, hands adjust small objects in a similar rhythmic fashion. The fold of a blanket, the alignment of herbs, the placement of a cup or vessel with quiet precision. These parallel gestures fill the air with understated continuity, a gentle echo that reinforces the calm of the space. The air shifts as a light breeze stirs the hanging curtains, brushing them gently against the frame. You reach out to steady one, feeling the cool fabric against your fingertips, smooth and familiar. The motion is slow, Unhurried, a small acknowledgement of presence within the quiet courtyard. Behind the curtain, an unseen hand smooths another piece of cloth, mirroring your care and attention. The shared rhythm, though unspoken and unobserved, creates a soft, invisible connection between the two of you. Your eyes wander to the small flower bed tucked against the far wall. Tiny blooms push through dark soil, their petals catching the sun's light, reflecting muted yellows and pale pinks. You kneel briefly, tracing the outline of a leaf with your fingertip, noting its slight serration and the dampness clinging to its underside. Behind the curtain, careful movements mirror yours in spirit. The slow adjustment of objects, the deliberate straightening of folds, each gesture a quiet companion to your own tactile engagement with the courtyard. You lift a basket filled with herbs, its weight familiar and reassuring. The woven fibers rub softly against your palms, carrying the earthy scent of thyme and rosemary. Each sprig seems to resist slightly as you arrange them, their texture grounding you in the rhythm of small, meaningful action. Behind the curtain, gentle hands perform similar motions, lifting, adjusting, smoothing, arranging. The unspoken choreography stretches across the walls and fabric, connecting you in a quiet, deliberate intimacy that has no words. A faint sound of footsteps reaches you, distant and muted, blending with the murmur of water and the rustle of leaves. You shift your stance slightly, pressing the basket closer to your chest, noticing the subtle pressure against your arms. The air is cool on your skin, tempered by the rising warmth of the sun. Behind the curtain, a mirrored presence moves in quiet correspondence, performing simple, attentive tasks, sliding a vessel across a wooden surface, folding fabric with care, each action reinforcing the calm rhythm of the morning. You return to the fountain, dipping a hand lightly into the cool water. The contact sends a brief, sharp contrast to the warmth that is built in the air, a momentary refreshment that grounds you further in the present. Behind the curtain, similar attention to small sensations persists. Fingers tracing the edge of a vessel, a hand brushing over a folded blanket, subtle motions that echo the careful attentiveness you allow yourself. The courtyard and the room beyond the fabric move together in silent harmony. The sun climbs higher, illuminating the textures of wood, stone, and fabric with soft clarity. You allow your gaze to wander slowly across the courtyard, noticing every crease, fold, and shadow. The tactile impressions, the coolness of stone under your hands, the rough fibers of baskets, the delicate resistance of leaves anchor your awareness. Behind the curtain, the parallel motions continue, unseen but perfectly synchronized, smoothing, aligning, adjusting, each gesture deliberate and unhurried. The rhythm of the day carries forward in this quiet, measured way, a gentle pulse beneath the warmth and light. You take another slow step along the path, feeling each uneven stone beneath your foot, attuned to the subtle shifts in balance and texture. The sound of water, the murmur of leaves, the faint scratch of wood against stone all blend into a tranquil backdrop. Behind the curtain, similar attentions persist. The careful placement of a bundle of herbs, the slow adjustment of fabric folds, the unspoken mindfulness of every gesture. The shared focus of these small, deliberate actions imbues the space with calm, connecting two presences across walls and curtains, in a rhythm that is both steady and soothing. You shift slightly, feeling the familiar creak of the floorboards beneath your feet. Each movement is deliberate, measured, as if you are negotiating a careful path through both space and time. The morning light has grown softer, filtered through the thin curtains that hang along the windows. Dust motes float lazily, suspended in golden shafts, drifting in slow, unhurried circles. Behind the curtain, your companion's hands adjust a small pile of linens with similar care, brushing and smoothing with deliberate patience. The mirrored motions create an unspoken companionship, each of you aware of the other without the need for sight or words. You pause by a low table, feeling the cool surface beneath your palms. The wood is worn smooth from years of use, with tiny nicks and scratches that tell quiet stories of past mornings, past movements, past touches. You set down a small bundle of cloth, the weight solid and reassuring, and arrange it carefully. Behind the curtain, a similar bundle is attended to in a mirrored rhythm, lifted, shifted, folded, aligned. The simple repetition of these actions grounds you, a tactile meditation punctuated by the soft creak of the boards and the distant gurgle of the fountain. The scent of damp earth drifts in from the open windows, mingling with the faint aroma of drying herbs. You inhale slowly, letting the subtle fragrance fill your senses, grounding you in the quiet ritual of the morning. Your fingers brush over the edges of the table, the grain catching slightly beneath your touch, reminding you of the passage of time. Behind the curtain, fingers trace the folds of fabric, the edge of a basket, or the rim of a ceramic cup, moving with the same deliberate, soothing attention. Each gesture, mirrored yet unseen, reinforces the calm, steady pulse of shared presence. You rise and move toward the hearth, the air cooler there, and reach to lift a small pot from its resting place. The metal is cool, smooth in your hands, and you feel the slight weight shift as you adjust your grip. Behind the curtain, hands perform similar attentions, adjusting a vessel, smoothing the edge of a blanket, aligning small objects with meticulous care. The quiet rhythm of these movements, lift, shift, settle, fills the room and courtyard with a soft, steady cadence. You pause to listen. The courtyard is almost silent now, except for the subtle rustle of leaves, the distant calls of birds, and the soft trickle of water. Your presence is careful, attentive. Every movement seems to echo, faint and soft, against stone and wood. Behind the curtain, the mirrored attentions continue, soft and precise. A linen straightened, a small tool nudged into place, a bundle of herbs shifted slightly. The deliberate slowness of these acts invites a sense of shared calm, a rhythm unhurried and soothing. The sunlight warms the floor beneath your feet, highlighting the variations in the wood grain, the subtle curves and ridges formed over years of use. You trace a fingertip over the edge of a table, noting the worn smoothness, the slight irregularities, and the gentle warmth absorbed from the sun. Behind the curtain, hands move in a corresponding quiet mindfulness. Smoothing, aligning, adjusting, attending to details that might otherwise go unnoticed. The mirrored actions carry a gentle intimacy, each gesture a silent acknowledgement of the other's presence. You kneel briefly to rearrange a few small items near the hearth, noticing the coolness of the stone under your knees and the softness of straw beneath them. Your hands move slowly, deliberately, touching, lifting, and settling objects with care. Behind the curtain, hands echo the motions, each touch deliberate, attentive, and calm. The shared rhythm of these simple tasks reinforces the quiet, unspoken connection between the two of you. A breeze drifts through the open window, brushing lightly against the curtains and the edge of your sleeve. You reach out to steady the fabric, feeling the soft resistance and smooth texture beneath your fingers. Behind the curtain, similar attention is given to the movement of textiles, the careful placement of small objects, and the subtle adjustment of folds. Each mirrored motion adds to the sense of calm, a shared mindfulness that stretches across walls and fabrics, unhurried and comforting. You straighten and glance around the room. Every surface, every object, every shadow is attended to with care. The courtyard beyond hums quietly with life, unnoticed, except for the soft murmur of water and the rustle of leaves. Behind the curtain, the mirrored attentions persist. Linens folded, bundles aligned, vessels adjusted with a gentle precision. The cumulative effect is a slow, steady rhythm, a meditation in motion, grounding you fully in the present moment. You return to the low table, arranging the bundles and vessels one last time before allowing your hands to rest. The warmth of the sun, the soft ambient sounds, the tactile engagement with familiar objects all combine to create a sense of ease. Behind the curtain, the mirrored presence continues its quiet attentions, an unseen companion participating in the same gentle choreography. You sit, feeling the calm rhythm of shared, unspoken care, letting it settle into your bones and linger in the still air. You rise slowly from the low table, stretching lightly, feeling the quiet pull of muscles that have settled into the calm rhythm of the morning. The floor beneath your feet is cool but welcoming, each step deliberate, measured, mindful. Outside, the sun climbs just a little higher, its warmth spilling across the courtyard and slipping in through the gaps of the half-open windows. The air carries the subtle scent of damp earth and drying herbs, mingling with the faint, lingering aroma of last night's fire. Behind the curtain, soft movements continue, a small bundle of linens lifted, shifted, and aligned with care, echoing your own attentions, though unseen. You move toward a narrow bench along the wall, brushing your fingers along its worn edge. The wood is smooth from years of hands settling and resting, each groove and indentation carrying memories you will never trace fully, but recognize instinctively. You set down a ceramic cup, its cool surface solid in your palm, and adjust the small pile of herbs beside it. Behind the curtain, your companion attends to a similar pile, fingers lightly brushing each stem as if they were small instruments in a silent symphony. Each careful movement creates a rhythm, unhurried and comforting, as though the air itself has slowed to match your pace. The faint chirping of birds rises through the open windows. Their calls are small and repetitive, each note a gentle punctuation against the soft murmur of the courtyard fountain. You lean over the bench, arranging items with precise care. The cup tilted slightly, a folded cloth smoothed over the edge of a basket. The smallest sprig of herb shifted just so. Behind the curtain, hands mimic the motion with a mirrored rhythm, touching, nudging, straightening, each movement deliberate and unhurried, as though the day itself were designed around this quiet, repetitive attention to detail. Your fingers linger over the edge of the bench for a moment, feeling the smoothness of the worn wood and the subtle variations in texture. You inhale slowly, noticing the mingling scents of earth, herbs, and lingering smoke, letting them fill your senses without rush. Behind the curtain, a small movement. Hands fold a corner of linen, tuck a sprig of sage beneath it, adjust a small container with the same deliberate attention. The mirrored gestures create a subtle rhythm in the room, a quiet choreography that is both grounding and calming. You rise and move to the hearth. The stones cool beneath your hands as you reach to adjust a small pile of kindling. Each piece is placed carefully, edges aligned and surfaces smoothed, as though you were arranging them for a gentle meditation rather than for fire. Behind the curtain, a similar attentiveness continues, objects shifted slightly, linens adjusted, small tasks performed with a slow, deliberate rhythm. The repetition of these movements, both seen and unseen, forms a gentle cadence that fills the space with calm, steady presence. The morning light softens further, casting long, golden shafts across the floor. Dust motes float through the beams, turning slowly as they drift, illuminated by the warmth of the sun. You kneel briefly to straighten a small bundle of linens on the hearth, noticing the slight roughness of the straw beneath your knees, the subtle warmth of sun on your back. Behind the curtain, similar motions echo. A basket tilted, a cloth adjusted, small attentions repeated over and over. The quiet echoing of these movements adds layers to the calm, a gentle reassurance in repetition. A soft breeze flows through the open window, brushing against your sleeve and stirring the edge of a curtain. You pause to adjust the fabric, smoothing it with careful fingers, noting the softness and slight coolness. Behind the curtain, similar attention is given. A bundle shifted slightly, a cloth straightened, hands moving in deliberate, mindful gestures. Each mirrored motion reinforces the unspoken connection, a shared presence that needs no words, only quiet attentiveness. You step back and take a slow breath, noticing the warm sunlight on your face and the cool floor beneath your feet. The courtyard hums quietly with life, the faint trickle of water, the distant rustle of leaves, the occasional bird call. Behind the curtain, mirrored gestures persist, almost imperceptible yet steady, creating a subtle symphony of movement. The calm rhythm of shared attention settles into your bones, a gentle pulse that extends through the space, grounding you fully in the quiet morning. You return briefly to the bench, aligning the remaining objects with the same careful attention. Cup, linen, herbs, and small containers arranged just so. The warm light highlights the textures, shadows falling softly across the surfaces. Behind the curtain, mirrored actions continue, delicate and unhurried. A gentle smoothing, a subtle shifting, a quiet alignment. You sit back, letting your hands rest on your knees, feeling the soothing cadence of the day, the mirrored presence, and the quiet, mindful repetition that has carried you through the early hours. Each movement, each gesture, each breath becomes part of a slow, shared rhythm. The world outside remains gentle and distant, while the space within holds a steady, calm pulse, echoing between your hands and the unseen companion behind the curtain. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the subtle hum of activity, repetition, and mirrored attention fill your awareness, grounding you in the serene, unhurried morning that stretches outward in soft, golden light. You rise from the bench, brushing the slight dust from your knees and the folds of your simple tunic. The warmth of the sun has shifted subtly, now touching the corner of the floor where the basket rests, where the small herbs are gathered. You step lightly, feeling the cool tiles underfoot, each step deliberate, measured, a quiet acknowledgement of the stillness around you. Outside, the faint rustle of leaves blends with the distant clatter of the barracks routine, a hinge swinging, a boot scraping against the stone, voices muffled and low. Behind the curtain, soft movements continue, hands adjusting linens, fingers grazing small objects with careful attention. You bend to lift a clay cup, noticing the weight and the subtle imperfections of its surface. The faint warmth from sunlight passing through the window. The cup is empty, yet it carries the memory of the water it once held, the faint scent of herbs steeped the night before. Behind the curtain, similar attentions mirror yours. A cup shifted slightly, a cloth folded again, hands moving in a silent rhythm that both matches and contrasts your own. You feel the quiet companionship of these movements, a gentle presence without words, a shared cadence of unhurried care. The courtyard hums with soft sounds. A bird lands on the edge of a low wall, flapping briefly before settling. A faint creak from a wooden door opening down the hall. The soft ripple of water from the small fountain. You inhale slowly, letting the mixture of sun, damp earth, and herbs fill your senses. Behind the curtain, hands move delicately over a folded linen, adjusting a small bundle of sage, aligning objects with exacting care. The mirrored motions create a comforting echo, a subtle dialogue of touch and attention, and the quiet repetition becomes almost hypnotic in its steadiness. You shift your gaze to a small pile of textiles, each fold pressed and aligned with patient care. The colors are muted, browns, soft greens, and ochres, softened by sunlight and wear. You straighten the edges, smooth the surfaces, fingers lingering on the fibers. Behind the curtain, similar attentions echo, fingers brushing over cloth, nudging a basket into place. A gentle smoothing that is nearly imperceptible. Each motion, repeated and mirrored, draws you further into a calm awareness of space, texture, and shared presence. The faint scent of drying herbs grows stronger as you lift a small bundle, feeling the delicate textures between your fingers. Sage leaves slightly brittle, rosemary stems firm yet pliable, lavender sprigs soft and fragrant. You arrange them with care, tucking each bundle neatly into a clay jar beside the hearth. Behind the curtain, hands perform a mirrored task, adjusting a small container, aligning a bundle of herbs, smoothing a cloth over the edge of a basket. The repetition, subtle and unhurried, becomes a quiet meditation, a rhythm of attention and presence that anchors the room in stillness. You move toward the open window, pushing aside the curtain slightly to let in a fuller beam of sunlight. The light warms your face, highlighting the gentle lines of concentration on your hands and the subtle movements of your companion beyond the fabric. Outside, the barracks shift slowly with the day. Footsteps echo faintly, the distant clank of a metal latch, the soft murmur of voices carried by the breeze. You inhale again, the scent of earth, sun-warmed wood, and dried herbs mingling, filling the space with quiet comfort. Behind the curtain, motions continue, fingers tracing along a folded cloth, a small container nudged slightly, a careful smoothing of a basket's edge. You sit briefly on the edge of the low bench, letting your hands rest on your knees, eyes half closed, absorbing the gentle rhythm of the room. The light shifts again, illuminating small motes of dust drifting lazily through the sunbeam. Each tiny movement is slow, deliberate. A leaf of sage adjusted, a linen fold straightened, the faint settling of a basket on the floor. The mirrored motions behind the curtain resonate softly, creating a delicate dialogue of touch and presence that needs no voice, only the gentle cadence of repeated care. A soft breeze enters through the open window, rustling the edge of the curtain and brushing lightly against your skin. You lean forward, adjusting the fabric, smoothing it with careful fingers, noting the soft coolness that contrasts with the warmth of the sun on your face. Behind the curtain, similar attentions continue. Hands shifting small bundles, smoothing cloth, nudging containers into place. Each subtle motion reinforces the quiet companionship, a shared awareness of the room and the day, a rhythm both calming and steady. You stand slowly, moving toward the hearth to adjust the small pile of kindling once more. Each piece is placed carefully, edges aligned, surfaces smooth. Behind the curtain, mirrored motions continue. A bundle of herbs adjusted, a cloth straightened, fingers lingering over objects with deliberate attention. The repetition of these movements, both seen and unseen, creates a subtle hum of presence, a quiet meditation in the middle of the morning. The sunlight deepens in color, casting long shadows across the floor. You straighten one final small bundle of linens, adjusting a cup and tucking a sprig of sage beneath it. Behind the curtain, similar attentions continue, delicate and unhurried, forming a soft, steady rhythm. You pause to take a slow breath, feeling the warmth, the textures, the gentle movements that fill the room, carrying the quiet pulse of shared attentions and calm presence. You step lightly across the room, feeling the unevenness of the stone floor beneath your bare feet. Each step presses into the slight roughness, a subtle reminder of the solid foundations beneath you, grounding you in the present moment. Your hands hover over the small wooden table, lingering on the worn edges, the faint scratches that trace past labors and quiet activities. Behind the curtain, similar attentions move in parallel. A hand brushes over the surface of a low stool, smoothing the fibers of a folded cloth, aligning a small jar of water with precise care. The repetition, slow and deliberate, becomes a comforting cadence, a quiet acknowledgement of shared presence in the space. You reach for a small bundle of herbs resting in a clay dish near the hearth, feeling the rough textures of dried rosemary and sage against your fingers. The fragrance rises gently, a mingling of sharp green notes and faint woodiness that fills your nostrils with subtle warmth. Behind the curtain, delicate movements mirror your own. Fingers trace along a small pile of linens, nudging a clay pot slightly to one side, smoothing the uneven folds of fabric. Each mirrored motion, repeated and careful, seems to form an invisible thread between you and your companion, a soft dialogue conveyed only through touch and attention. The morning light shifts across the floor, highlighting the muted tones of the walls and the gentle textures of the wooden beams overhead. You notice a small crack in the plaster near the window, faint and unremarkable, yet grounding your gaze in the quiet intricacies of your surroundings. Behind the curtain, small adjustments echo your own observations. A cloth repositioned to catch the light, a small bundle nudged into a straight line, hands lingering for the satisfaction of order. The room hums with these subtle acts, a muted symphony of quiet care, repeated and extended without haste or comment. You lean slightly to adjust the clay cup you had set on the edge of the bench, its round shape catching the sunlight and warming under your touch. You feel the weight of it, the slight roughness of the surface, the tiny imperfections that make it unique. Behind the curtain, a mirrored hand reaches toward a similar object. A small jar or dish, shifted slightly, repositioned with care, smoothing the surface beneath. Each tiny motion contributes to a rhythm that anchors the room in stillness, a delicate acknowledgement of presence and attention that needs no words, only observation and patience. You lift a folded linen from the pile beside the hearth, letting it slip gently through your fingers, feeling the soft texture and faint warmth of the sun passing through the fabric. The scent of earth and herbs is subtle, barely perceptible, yet grounding and comforting. Behind the curtain, movements continue in harmony. Fingers trace the edges of cloth, align small bundles, and adjust objects with gentle precision. This quiet repetition, almost imperceptible, forms a calming pattern, a slow and deliberate acknowledgement of time passing without urgency or interruption. The faint clatter of distant activity drifts through the open window, the soft scrape of a boot across stone, the low murmur of conversation carried by the wind, the creak of a wooden hinge. You inhale slowly, letting these background sounds settle around you, mingling with the scents of herbs, wood, and sun-warmed stone. Behind the curtain, hands continue their careful work, smoothing fabric, nudging objects into place, fingers lingering on the surfaces with steady intent. Each motion mirrors the slow, deliberate rhythm that has begun to anchor your awareness, drawing your mind into the gentle pulse of presence. You move toward a small shelf against the far wall, adjusting a clay jar and a folded cloth, feeling the weight of each object and the texture beneath your fingertips. Behind the curtain, a corresponding motion unfolds. A small bundle nudged into alignment, a dish tilted slightly to catch the light, fingers smoothing the edges of cloth in quiet mimicry. The synchronization, subtle and unspoken, creates a soft resonance, a meditation of touch and presence that fills the room with calm repetition. You step back to observe the scene, the bench, the folded linens, the small jars, the clay dish, each object carefully aligned and adjusted. The sunlight catches the surfaces in gentle highlights, and the slight movement of the curtain hints at life beyond your immediate attention. Behind the curtain, mirrored adjustments continue, objects repositioned, cloths smoothed, fingers lingering over surfaces with deliberate care. The pattern of motions, soft, unhurried, patient, forms a delicate network of presence, quiet companionship, and mindful repetition. A soft breeze passes through the window, carrying with it the faint scent of distant herbs and the warmth of the morning sun. You let it brush against your skin, feeling the subtle coolness that contrasts with the sun-warmed stone beneath your feet. Behind the curtain, fingers continue their deliberate movements, nudging a small clay jar, aligning a folded linen, smoothing the surface of a basket. The quiet rhythm persists, a shared presence articulated through attention and gentle repetition, a slow and deliberate meditation on space, texture, and small, steady acts of care. You sit briefly on the bench, resting your hands on your knees, eyes half closed, absorbing the stillness and the muted harmony of the room. Each movement, both your own and the mirrored ones behind the curtain, contributes to a delicate, continuous pulse, a soft cadence that seems to slow time itself. The sunlight shifts gently across the floor, highlighting textures, colors, and surfaces with subtle warmth. Each fold, each nudge, each careful adjustment forms a quiet meditation, a gentle rhythm of shared presence that envelops the room in calm. You rise from the bench, letting your fingers linger on the smooth wood as you stretch slowly, feeling the tension in your shoulders ease with the simple motion. The room exhales with you, the air settling quietly as the sun inches higher, spilling a soft glow over the uneven floor and the rough plaster walls. You notice the slight chill where the light does not reach, the cooler shadowed corners that invite your attention. Behind the curtain, subtle movements mirror yours. A hand adjusts a folded cloth, nudges a small wooden bowl into alignment, fingers brushing the edge of a jar with a deliberate patience. The repetition of these gestures, slow and careful, forms an unspoken conversation between the spaces, a dialogue of presence and mindfulness that requires no words. You move toward the small hearth at the far end of the room, feeling the cool stone beneath your feet and the uneven warmth of the lingering embers from last night's fire. You brush a layer of ash from the surface, smoothing the stones with the back of your hand, and the faint scent of smoke rises, mingling with the herbs that hang from a hook above. Behind the curtain, movements respond in kind. A bundle of dried rosemary is adjusted slightly, a small clay pot repositioned to catch the morning light, fingers lingering over surfaces to ensure evenness and order. The room fills with quiet rhythm, a soft meditation in motion, each action acknowledging the other without haste or urgency. Your eyes follow the curve of a low wooden shelf, noting the slight tilt of a clay jar and the uneven stack of folded linens. You kneel to adjust them, feeling the texture of each fabric and the cool smoothness of the clay, aligning them with gentle care. Behind the curtain, mirrored attention is given to similar objects. A dish nudged slightly forward, a bundle of herbs straightened, hands lingering on surfaces as if drawing the warmth of morning into the touch. The interplay of subtle motions, delicate and unspoken, creates a shared rhythm, a pulse of quiet presence that threads through the room like a gentle, invisible cord. You reach for a small wooden stool near the hearth, feeling the grain under your fingers, noticing the slight roughness that comes from years of use. You shift it slightly to better catch the sunlight, listening to the faint scrape against the stone floor. Behind the curtain, hands respond with corresponding adjustments. A folded cloth shifted, a small jar nudged, the soft sound of objects meeting surfaces aligning with your own action. Each motion, deliberate and measured, adds to the steady cadence of quiet activity, a rhythm of presence and attentiveness that requires no acknowledgement beyond the subtle echo of movement. The light continues to shift, casting long, warm beams across the stone floor, highlighting textures and surfaces with gentle clarity. You pause to watch the play of shadows, the subtle contrast between sunlit warmth and shaded coolness, feeling the delicate change in temperature across your skin. Behind the curtain, gentle motions continue, fingers smoothing the surface of a folded cloth, nudging a jar into place, adjusting the angle of a small wooden bowl. The mirrored actions create a sense of companionship, a quiet alignment that brings comfort without the need for speech or direct interaction. You bend slightly to lift a folded bundle of cloth, noticing the faint scent of herbs that have settled into the fibers overnight. The soft weight rests in your hands, the texture yielding gently under your fingers as you place it neatly on the shelf. Behind the curtain, similar care is taken. A bundle of linens adjusted, a small dish nudged to a precise spot, fingers lingering on surfaces to ensure everything is in quiet harmony. The repetition, slow and attentive, creates a meditative rhythm, a soft pulse that fills the room with calm and focus, unhurried and deliberate. You step back to observe the room as a whole, the hearth, the bench, the neatly stacked linens, the small clay jars and wooden bowls, each element aligned and attended to with careful attention. Behind the curtain, mirrored movements continue in their subtle cadence. A jar shifted slightly, a cloth smoothed, a bundle adjusted just so. The quiet repetition forms a dialogue without words, a shared acknowledgement of presence and care, a gentle awareness of time passing in slow, deliberate increments. The faint sounds of life beyond the walls drift in, a distant bird call, the soft murmur of voices carried on the breeze, the subtle scrape of distant boots against stone. You inhale slowly, letting these ambient notes settle around you, mingling with the gentle scent of herbs, smoke, and warmed clay. Behind the curtain, movements persist with soft precision, nudging, smoothing, aligning. Each motion adds to the steady rhythm, a meditation of presence and care that fills the space with quiet attentiveness. You settle onto the bench once more, letting your hands rest in your lap, eyes half closed as the warmth of sunlight brushes your skin and the room breathes in its own gentle cadence. Each small movement, your own and the mirrored gestures behind the curtain, forms a continuous pulse of slow, deliberate care. You notice the subtle textures, the quiet light, the soft scents, and the measured sounds that define this space, letting them sink into your awareness. The room is alive with quiet motion, the gentle rhythm of presence, patience, and careful attention, a soothing meditation in the simplicity of daily life. You rise slowly, letting your back stretch as the morning light filters through the small window, tracing pale, shifting rectangles across the worn floorboards. Your feet sink slightly into the uneven wooden planks, warm from the sun, yet still cool in the shadowed corners. The air is soft, carrying the faint scent of lingering smoke from last night's hearth, and the subtle herbal aroma that clings to cloths and jars. You inhale gently, letting the mixture of warmth, earth, and dried leaves settle in your chest, a quiet weight that feels oddly comforting. Behind the curtain, movements respond in harmony. A hand lifts a small bundle of linens, smoothing the creases, while another nudges a clay jar into a better position to catch the light. Each action is deliberate, slow, the attention measured and careful, as if the day itself moves in small, synchronized gestures. Your eyes follow the curve of the long, low bench along the wall. You trace the edge with a fingertip, noticing the subtle grooves left by years of use. You slide a folded cloth along its surface, letting it settle just so, before standing back to observe the gentle alignment of your surroundings. Behind the curtain, hands mirror the care. A small bowl shifted a hair's breadth, a bundle of herbs adjusted with patience. The interplay of movement and stillness forms a quiet dialogue, unspoken but intimately shared. The room breathes with these soft motions, each act of attention amplifying the sense of calm and measured pace, a gentle rhythm you can follow with your own senses. You move toward the hearth again, brushing your hands along the rough stone surface. You notice the faint remnants of ash from yesterday's fire, tiny grey grains that cling stubbornly to your fingers. You wipe them onto a scrap of cloth, the subtle friction scraping away the last remnants. Behind the curtain, a small hand mirrors the motion, gently dusting a surface, smoothing a cloth. These repeated gestures create a meditative cadence, each one deliberate, each one unnoticed in its subtlety, yet all part of a quiet, shared rhythm that fills the room with soft continuity. The sun rises higher, and the light shifts, casting longer shadows and illuminating textures previously hidden in muted corners. You let your fingers linger on the surfaces of wooden bowls, the smooth clay of jars, and the woven fibers of folded linens, noticing the tactile nuances of each material. Behind the curtain, mirrored gestures continue, adjusting, smoothing, aligning. The room hums with soft, tactile attention, the day unfolding in measured increments, every motion considered, every touch intentional. You feel the calm pulse of the space, its rhythm independent of words or spoken acknowledgement, yet intimately felt. You pause to adjust a small stool near the hearth, noticing the way the sunlight glances across its edges. You brush a finger over its worn surface, feeling the gentle warmth of the wood and the subtle unevenness of its age. Behind the curtain, movements reflect the same attentive care. A bundle of cloths is realigned, a jar shifted imperceptibly to catch more light. The repetition is soothing, a quiet choreography of presence that requires no speech, no acknowledgement, only the soft affirmation of deliberate, careful action. A faint breeze drifts through the open window, stirring the edges of cloths and the dried herbs hanging from hooks. You inhale slowly, feeling the soft chill mingle with the warmth of the sunlight, creating a gentle contrast on your skin. Behind the curtain, movements adjust in response. A cloth fluttering slightly is smoothed down, a small jar moved back into place. These micro-adjustments reinforce the quiet rhythm of the room, a harmony of movement and stillness, each action settling into the next like notes in a soft, unhurried melody. Your gaze drifts over the room as a whole, the hearth, the low bench, the carefully stacked linens, and the small jars aligned along shelves. Every surface carries the soft imprint of attention, each object positioned with gentle care. Behind the curtain, subtle gestures continue, echoing the same attentiveness. The repeated, measured acts of care create a sense of unity in the space, a calm acknowledgement of presence and thought. Each motion a soft brushstroke painting the contours of the day. You return to the bench and sit quietly, hands resting in your lap. The light has settled into steady warmth, the air carrying faint scents of wood, herbs and ash. The room is alive with the quiet hum of deliberate movements, the gentle alignment of objects, the soft rhythm of presence and care. You allow yourself to sink into this awareness, noticing the texture of the wood beneath your hands, the subtle variations in light across the stone floor, the gentle fragrance that lingers in the air. Each motion, both your own and the mirrored gestures behind the curtain, contributes to a steady cadence of quiet attentiveness. You lean back slightly, letting your eyes half close as the sunlight brushes across your face. The room seems to breathe in tandem with you, soft and slow, measured and gentle. Behind the curtain, hands continue their subtle adjustments, smoothing, nudging, aligning. The repetition creates a hypnotic rhythm, each movement echoing the previous in delicate harmony, reinforcing the sense of calm and meditative focus. Time stretches and softens, each moment blending seamlessly into the next, a continuous stream of measured presence that allows the day to unfold without rush or interruption. Finally, you settle fully into the bench, letting the warmth of the sunlight sink into your skin and the quiet rhythm of small movements wrap around your senses. Each subtle action, each deliberate gesture, becomes part of the room's slow heartbeat, a steady, calming pulse that threads through the space. You notice textures, scents, and faint ambient sounds, the distant murmur of activity beyond the walls, the subtle creak of floorboards, the soft scent of lingering herbs, all combining into a gentle awareness that soothes and lulls. A soft meditation in motion, patient and unhurried. You rise from the bench with deliberate care, stretching slowly as if the movement itself can coax the stiffness from your shoulders. The warmth of the sun has grown, filling the room with a mellow light that slides along the floorboards in long golden strips. Each step toward the small window is measured, your bare feet making soft, muted sounds against the worn wood. The air carries a quiet sweetness today, a mingling of dust, sun-warmed cloth, and the faint, lingering scent of herbs tucked into jars along the shelves. You inhale deeply, letting the warmth and subtle fragrance fill your chest, a gentle contrast to the cool shadow that still clings to the corners of the room. Behind the curtain, a movement catches your eye. A hand adjusts the edge of a small woven rug, smoothing its folds with careful repetition. You notice the soft, muted swish of fabric against floor, a sound almost imperceptible but grounding, a subtle punctuation to the otherwise still space. Your own hands reach for a folded cloth resting on the bench, lifting it and brushing over its fibers. The texture is rough yet soft in places, worn by repeated use but still pliable. You fold it carefully, matching the precision mirrored behind the curtain. Every action is slow, deliberate, part of a rhythm that does not demand attention yet fills the room with steady, measured life. You pause at the hearth, brushing a fingertip across the top of the stone. The surface has retained warmth from yesterday's fire, a gentle radiance that contrasts with the cooler shadows underneath. Behind the curtain, a small hand adjusts a clay jar, nudging it to catch the light in just the right way. The motions are minimal, almost imperceptible, yet they carry a quiet intent, a soft echo of the same care you give to the surfaces and objects around you. You inhale slowly, noticing the mingling scents of clay, ash, and lingering smoke, allowing each note to settle and drift, creating a gentle meditative awareness in your chest. The sunlight shifts gradually, brushing across the low shelves where herbs are bundled and jars are aligned. You let your fingers trace the contours of a small ceramic bowl, noting the subtle imperfections left by the maker's hand. A slight curve, a tiny indentation, a soft ridge that catches the light. Behind the curtain, mirrored gestures smooth a folded linen or align a small jar in parallel. The repetition, unspoken yet precise, creates a quiet dialogue in space, a gentle rhythm that wraps around the senses. You breathe in tandem with these subtle movements, letting them guide the pace of your own awareness. A breeze drifts through the open window, stirring the edges of cloths and dangling herbs. You tilt your head slightly, feeling the air shift against your skin, a gentle dance of warm and cool currents. Behind the curtain, movements respond. A loose end of fabric is tucked back, a bundle of dried leaves adjusted. The room becomes a quiet interplay of texture and motion, air and sunlight, objects and gentle, deliberate hands. You watch each subtle shift, your gaze following, noting, appreciating, as the day unfolds without urgency, each small motion adding to a sense of calm continuity. You move to the low table where several small items await attention. A folded cloth, a clay jar, a bundle of dried herbs. Each object has been placed with care, yet your fingers still brush along their surfaces, checking alignment, smoothing edges, adjusting placement with tender precision. Behind the curtain, similar movements echo these adjustments, a subtle choreography that fills the room with a quiet, shared rhythm. You notice the faint sounds, the soft scraping of cloth against wood, the gentle tap of clay against stone, the whisper of herb bundles brushing together. These tiny noises become part of a larger, unhurried symphony of presence and attention. Your eyes drift over the walls, lined with small hooks holding bundles of herbs and tools. You run a hand along one, feeling the texture of the string that binds the leaves, noting the subtle crinkle of dried leaves pressed together. Behind the curtain, a hand lifts a bundle, shakes it slightly, and places it back in its assigned spot. The motion slow, exact. You inhale the faint scent released by the disturbance of the leaves, allowing it to mingle with the warmth of the sunlight, the faint ash, and the lingering herbal fragrance. The room is alive, with soft, deliberate care, each movement small yet significant in its quiet attention. You pause by the bench, letting the warmth of the wood seep into your hands as you sit. Your eyes follow the sun's progress across the floorboards, noting subtle shifts in light and shadow, the delicate patterns they create. Behind the curtain, a hand adjusts a small vessel, catching the sunlight for a fraction longer, the action almost ceremonial in its simplicity. Each gesture, both yours and mirrored behind the fabric, reinforces the rhythm of the day, slow, measured, calming. The air hums softly with these movements, a quiet acknowledgement of presence that requires no words, no observation, only gentle, repeated attention. You take a moment to inhale, noticing the faint mingling of scents, sun-warmed wood, dried herbs, traces of ash, and the cool breeze that drifts from the open window. Behind the curtain, subtle adjustments continue. A cloth realigned, a jar nudged, a bundle of herbs straightened. The repetition is meditative, the gentle motions echoing one another, creating a quiet harmony that settles across the room. You lean back slightly, eyes half closed, feeling the warmth, the air, and the deliberate pace of small movements wrap around your senses. A cocoon of calm that stretches and softens time. Finally, you settle fully into the bench, letting your hands rest lightly in your lap. The sunlight bathes your shoulders and face. The faint breeze rustles the edges of hanging cloths and herb bundles, and the room hums softly with deliberate, unhurried motion. Each touch, each adjustment, each measured gesture becomes part of a gentle rhythm that fills the space with quiet presence. You feel the calm pulse of life here, soft and steady, each moment blending into the next without interruption. The day continues in its unhurried, patient way, and you sink into this awareness, letting it carry you through the warm, gentle morning. You rise from the bench with a slow, deliberate stretch, feeling the faint warmth of the sunlight sliding along the floorboards. The light shifts slightly as the morning stretches on, falling in long, soft rays that scatter across the worn wood. Each step you take is quiet, almost careful, your bare feet pressing gently against the smooth, familiar surface. The air carries a mixture of scents, dried herbs hanging from hooks, faint traces of ash from the hearth, and the subtle, earthy smell of sun-warmed cloth. You inhale deeply, letting each note fill your lungs. a slow, grounding rhythm that eases the mind and encourages the body to move unhurriedly. Behind the curtain, you notice a flicker of movement, a hand smoothing a small rug, a bundle of dried leaves adjusted just so. The motion is minimal, almost imperceptible, yet it carries a quiet precision. You mirror the attentiveness, picking up a folded cloth from the bench and brushing your fingers across its surface. The fabric is worn, soft in places, rough in others, and the texture alone demands careful, measured handling. You fold it slowly, each crease deliberate, letting the motion match the subtle rhythm occurring behind the curtain. The quiet repetition becomes meditative, a soft, shared language of care that requires no words. Your gaze drifts to the hearth, where the stones have retained a faint warmth from a fire long since extinguished. You brush a fingertip across the top, noting the contrast between the lingering heat and the cooler shadows beneath. Behind the curtain, a small hand adjusts a clay jar, nudging it into a sliver of sunlight. The movement is subtle but purposeful, an echo of the care with which you handle your own surroundings. You inhale the mingling scents, warm stone, faint smoke, and the lingering earthy aroma of the herbs, each note settling slowly into your awareness. You move toward a low table, where several items wait for attention. Folded cloths, small jars, and bundles of dried herbs. Your fingers trail over the surfaces, feeling textures, noting imperfections and subtle irregularities, smoothing, aligning, and adjusting with careful patience. Behind the curtain, mirrored movements occur. A jar shifted slightly, a bundle straightened, a cloth refolded. Each gesture, though small, contributes to the quiet choreography of the room, a soft, continuous rhythm that permeates the space. You listen to the faint sounds, cloth brushing wood, jar tapping stone, herbs rustling gently. These sounds, though minute, form a quiet symphony of presence and attentiveness. The sunlight continues its slow arc, casting soft shadows along the walls and illuminating the shelves lined with small jars and bundles. You let your hand drift along a row of ceramic vessels, feeling their subtle contours and imperfections, noting the maker's touch in every curve and ridge. Behind the curtain, a hand lifts a bundle of herbs, shakes it gently, and replaces it with care. You inhale the faint fragrance released by this minor disturbance, noticing how it blends with the warmth of the sun and the lingering traces of smoke. Each tiny movement is absorbed into the larger rhythm of the space, a gentle, calming repetition. A soft breeze drifts through the open window, ruffling the edges of hanging cloths and shifting the leaves of the herbs. You feel the subtle change in temperature as the current passes across your skin, cool against the warmth of your shoulders. Behind the curtain, a hand responds, tucking a loose edge back into place, nudging a bundle of herbs into alignment. The room becomes alive with these quiet gestures, each movement deliberate, part of a seamless dialogue between you and the unseen presence behind the fabric. You notice the soft blend of textures, sounds, and scents, letting each detail settle in your mind without judgment or hurry. You pause at the bench, letting your hands rest lightly on the wood as you observe the gentle interplay of sunlight, shadow, and movement. Behind the curtain, small adjustments continue with measured patience. A cloth smoothed, a jar nudged, herbs aligned. The repetition is calming, a shared awareness of care and attention that fills the room without need for words. You close your eyes briefly, allowing the warmth, the gentle motion, and the soft scent of herbs to envelop you. Each slow breath brings a sense of quiet harmony, a steady pulse that carries through the room, through the motions, and into your body. Finally, you settle fully onto the bench, letting your hands rest in your lap and your eyes follow the shifting light across the floorboards. Behind the curtain, movements continue in their subtle, unhurried rhythm. The warmth of the sun, the faint breeze, the gentle, repeated gestures all combine to form a quiet, steady presence that fills the room. You inhale and exhale slowly, letting the rhythm of the space, the mirrored movements, and the soft sounds wrap around you. The day unfolds in its patient, careful manner, and you sink fully into the gentle, continuous flow of time, letting it carry you forward, unhurried and calm. You rise slowly from the bench, feeling the gentle stiffness in your legs as the warmth of the morning sun brushes across your shoulders. The light has shifted slightly, falling in soft, golden slants through the small, open windows of the barracks. Each ray catches dust motes, causing them to drift lazily in the air like tiny suspended stars. You take a deep breath, noting the mingling scents of sun-warmed wood, faint smoke from the hearth, and the lingering aroma of dried herbs hanging in bundles along the walls. The air is still except for the soft rustle of cloth and the occasional distant clatter of a metal cup. Behind the curtain, you sense subtle movements. A hand smoothing a creased sheet, a brush of fingers adjusting a small clay pot. The gestures are small, deliberate, and unhurried, each one blending seamlessly with the quiet rhythm of the room. You mirror the care with which these tasks are performed, reaching for a folded cloth, feeling its soft, worn texture and noting the tiny frays along its edges. You fold it slowly, letting each crease fall naturally into place, observing the way the folds catch the light. The repetition is calming, almost hypnotic, a gentle metronome that sets the pace of the morning. Your gaze drifts to a low table, where several small items await attention. Jars of dried herbs, a bundle of straw, and neatly folded cloths. You let your fingers trail over the surfaces, noting subtle textures, the smooth coolness of clay, the rough edges of a woven bundle, the faint stickiness of herbs crushed slightly in their storage. Behind the curtain, mirrored movements occur, a jar nudged into better alignment, a cloth smoothed, a bundle gently straightened. Each tiny gesture contributes to the quiet choreography of the room, a shared attentiveness that requires no words. The warmth of the sunlight accentuates the textures around you, the grain of the wooden table, the softness of linen, the fine detail of braided twine. You inhale slowly, taking in the scents and allowing them to settle into your awareness. Behind the curtain, a hand shifts a small jar, releasing a subtle waft of dried rosemary. You notice the fragrance mixing with the warmth and faint smoke, forming a gentle, enveloping aroma that fills the space. Each movement, each subtle change in scent and light, contributes to the quiet intimacy of the moment. You move toward the hearth, brushing your hand across the stones, noting the lingering warmth from the fire that burned the night before. Behind the curtain, a small hand adjusts a bundle of herbs, ensuring it catches a sliver of sunlight. You close your eyes briefly, feeling the slow, steady warmth seep into your skin. The tactile sensation is grounding. The smoothness of stone, the roughness of herbs, the unevenness of sun-warmed floorboards beneath your feet. You inhale the mix of fragrances again, letting the calm seep through every breath. A soft breeze drifts in from the open windows, carrying with it the faint scent of grass and earth from outside. The movement of the air shifts hanging cloths slightly, rustling them ever so gently. Behind the curtain, hands respond with measured care, tucking a loose corner back into place, nudging a bundle into alignment. You move with the same deliberate patience, touching objects lightly, aligning them with a quiet satisfaction. The room hums with the rhythm of small, synchronized gestures, and you become attuned to it, each motion a note in a gentle symphony. You pause at the bench, letting your hands rest lightly on the wood as your eyes follow the slow dance of shadows and light across the floor. Behind the curtain, subtle movements continue. A jar adjusted, a cloth smoothed, herbs shifted with precision. Each gesture seems almost meditative, part of a language of care that is understood without words. You breathe slowly, feeling the warmth, the gentle breeze, the quiet repetition of small, careful tasks. Your body relaxes, your mind softens, and the rhythm of the morning carries you into a deeper, slower awareness. Finally, you settle fully onto the bench, letting your hands rest in your lap, your gaze following the interplay of light and shadow. Behind the curtain, the movements continue in their quiet, unhurried way, a mirrored rhythm that calms and reassures. You notice the faint scent of sun, smoke, and herbs blending into a single soothing aroma. Each soft sound, the rustle of cloth, the tap of a jar, the brush of fingers forms a gentle background hum that settles over you. The day stretches onward, unhurried, measured, and gentle, and you allow yourself to sink fully into its calm, letting it carry you along, softly, steadily, without need for urgency or distraction. You rise again, stretching slowly, noticing the soft creak of the wooden floor beneath your feet. The morning has settled into a quiet rhythm, each movement deliberate and calm. Sunlight filters through the narrow windows of the barracks, casting long, gentle shadows across the floorboards. Dust motes dance lazily in the light, moving in a slow, hypnotic pattern, and you watch them for a moment, letting the mind drift along their gentle paths. The air smells faintly of straw, wood, and the subtle tang of morning dew that still lingers at the edges of the open windows. Behind the curtain, you sense the small gestures of another hand's arranging folded cloth, a careful brush of fingers over the table, adjusting a clay jar so that it sits evenly. You mirror these motions, tracing the lines of the objects with your fingertips, noting each subtle irregularity, the small imperfections that make them real and tactile. You fold a piece of linen slowly, letting the creases fall naturally, appreciating the quiet precision required. Each repetition is soothing, almost meditative, and you feel a sense of shared rhythm with the hidden presence behind the curtain. Your eyes wander to a low bench along the wall, where small tools and items have been set out for the morning's work. A wooden comb lies alongside a small brush, and you let your fingers trail over their smooth, worn surfaces. The tactile sensation grounds you, the cool hardness of the wood, the faint scratch of bristles, the way each object seems to carry the memory of repeated use. Behind the curtain, mirrored gestures occur. A comb nudged slightly, a brush set just so, the subtle alignment of tools with careful attention. The quiet repetition of these small actions weaves a gentle cadence into the room. The hearth is now emitting a soft, steady warmth. You reach toward it, brushing your hand across the cool stone edge before settling near its comforting glow. Behind the curtain, a small bundle of herbs is shifted so that it catches the light just right, releasing a faint, soothing aroma of dried lavender and rosemary. You inhale slowly, letting the scent blend with the warmth of the sun and the faint smokiness from the hearth. Each breath deepens the calm. Each movement of your hands adds to the measured rhythm that fills the room. A soft breeze drifts in from outside, moving the edges of hanging cloths and shifting the dust in its path. Behind the curtain, hands respond with gentle, careful adjustments, tucking corners and nudging bundles into place. You notice the subtle play of light and shadow as the breeze passes, and allow yourself to focus entirely on the small details, the way a fold catches the light, the soft rustle of fabric, the scent of sun-warmed herbs mixing with the faint tang of smoke. Every sense is gently engaged, each subtle motion reinforcing the serenity of the space. You move slowly to the bench, sitting and allowing your hands to rest lightly on the smooth, worn surface. Behind the curtain, movements continue in their quiet, deliberate way, a dance of care that does not require attention but rather encourages mindfulness. You watch the interplay of light and shadow, the gentle motions, and the subtle, soothing scents that drift through the air. The day progresses slowly, without urgency, allowing time to expand and contract in a measured, comforting rhythm. Your gaze settles on a small jar of dried herbs, noting the way the sunlight hits its edges, refracting into soft golden tones. Behind the curtain, a hand adjusts another jar, releasing a faint, mingling aroma. You inhale again, the mixture of scents grounding you, settling your thoughts into the present moment. The gentle, repeated motions of folding, arranging, adjusting, and aligning become a soft, hypnotic pattern that seems to echo through the space. Finally, you let your body relax into the bench fully, observing the quiet symmetry of the room and the mirrored care behind the curtain. Each movement, each breath, and each small gesture blends together into a gentle rhythm. The warmth, the light, the faint scents, and the soft sounds form a cocoon around you, carrying you steadily forward in the slow, unhurried pace of morning. You feel your muscles loosen, your mind soften, and the room itself seems to hum with the gentle insistence of calm, measured attention. You stand once more, stretching your arms above your head and feeling the quiet stiffness in your back ease with the motion. The morning sunlight continues its slow progression, sliding through the barracks' narrow windows and warming the wooden floor beneath your feet. Dust motes drift gently in the light, twisting and turning as if dancing to a rhythm you cannot hear but can sense. You pause for a moment, letting your eyes follow their lazy, suspended journey, feeling the mind ease into the gentle flow of observation. The air smells faintly of sun-warmed wood, straw, and a subtle, lingering hint of smoke from the hearth. Behind the curtain, small movements indicate the quiet presence of another. A hand adjusting a folded cloth, fingers brushing over the surface of a clay jar. A slight rearrangement of bundles of dried herbs. You mirror these careful gestures, your fingers tracing the textures of objects: smooth clay, soft linen, rough twine. You fold a small cloth with deliberate attention, letting each crease fall naturally. The quiet repetition of this task is soothing, reinforcing a shared rhythm with the hidden companion behind the curtain. Every action feels significant in its calm precision, each small motion a contribution to the steady pattern of the morning. Your gaze drifts to a low table where several objects await gentle attention. There is a small wooden comb, a brush with stiff bristles, and a folded linen cloth, its edges slightly frayed from repeated use. You pick up the comb, feeling its smoothness under your fingers, and let the brush of your palm glide over the bristles. Behind the curtain, mirrored motions occur. A brush is nudged, a comb shifted, a cloth smoothed. Each small adjustment adds to the rhythm of shared care, a dance without words, a communication through motion and attention alone. The warmth from the hearth seeps further into the room, brushing against your shoulders and arms. You reach toward it lightly, resting your palms on the cool stones before drawing them back into the gentle heat. Behind the curtain, hands adjust a bundle of herbs so that it catches the sun's light, releasing its soft, calming scent into the air. You inhale slowly, letting the mingling fragrances of lavender, rosemary, smoke, and sun-warmed wood fill your awareness. Each breath, each gentle movement contributes to a growing sense of tranquility, a quiet intimacy that requires no recognition but is deeply present. A soft breeze enters through the open windows, causing hanging cloths to sway lightly and sending small eddies of dust through the sunlit air. Behind the curtain, hands respond with measured care, tucking and nudging objects into place with precision. You allow your attention to linger on these details: the soft rustle of fabric, the interplay of shadow and light, the shifting fragrance of herbs and warmed wood. The gentle motions and sensory details create a cocoon of calm, anchoring you in the quiet, unhurried passage of time. You move slowly to the bench and sit, letting your hands rest lightly on the surface, feeling the smoothness of worn wood and the slight ridges where the grain has deepened over time. Behind the curtain, movements continue, synchronized yet imperceptibly apart, creating a subtle rhythm that fills the room with a sense of balance and serenity. You notice the warm sunlight on your skin, the faint scent of herbs, and the soft sound of your own breathing blending with the quiet motions around you. Your attention drifts to a small jar of dried flowers on the table, catching the sunlight at just the right angle to make the colors glow softly. Behind the curtain, a hand nudges another jar, releasing a subtle fragrance that mingles with the warm air and the faint smoke of the hearth. You breathe in slowly, savoring the mingled scents, feeling them ground you in the quiet cadence of the morning. Each motion, each sensory detail, the warmth, the light, the fragrance, the textures, reinforces a gentle, meditative pace. Finally, you lean back slightly on the bench, allowing the body to settle fully into its quiet support. The mirrored gestures behind the curtain continue, small and deliberate, reinforcing a rhythm that is both steady and soothing. The warmth, the light, the gentle scents, and the soft sounds of subtle movement surround you, weaving a cocoon of calm that invites the mind to soften. You close your eyes briefly, feeling the gentle passage of time, and sink into the peaceful rhythm of the room, letting each small gesture, each soft scent, and each warm touch carry you further into a slow, serene awareness of the morning. You rise with measured slowness, letting the stiffness of sitting release through your shoulders and back. The sunlight has shifted slightly in the barracks, falling at a gentler angle through the narrow windows and warming the worn floorboards beneath your feet. Dust motes rise in lazy, suspended patterns, turning and twisting in the light like tiny, unhurried dancers. You pause for a moment to follow their quiet motion, feeling the mind slow to match the rhythm of the drifting particles. The air carries a faint aroma of straw, warm wood, and the subtle smoke lingering from the morning hearth. Behind the curtain, the faint shuffle of movement betrays a presence. A hand adjusts a bundle of linen, fingers brushing over the edges with delicate care. You respond instinctively, letting your own hands mirror these small deliberate actions, smoothing a folded cloth and allowing its crease to settle naturally. Each repetition is calming, a quiet ceremony of attention, reinforcing a shared cadence with the hidden figure behind the curtain. There is a simple intimacy in this mirrored rhythm, a connection formed through silence and the gentle care of everyday tasks. Your gaze rests on a low wooden table along the wall. Several objects lie in careful arrangement: a small comb with worn edges, a brush with stiff bristles, a folded linen cloth, and a clay jar with faint ridges along its side. You pick up the comb, letting your fingers trace its smooth surface, and gently run the brush across the cloth. Behind the curtain, similar motions occur. A cloth is adjusted, a brush shifted, a jar nudged slightly into place. These small movements create a quiet harmony, each subtle action contributing to the slow, measured pulse of the room. The hearth radiates a steady warmth that brushes your arms and shoulders. You approach and rest your hands on the cool stones for a moment before drawing them back into the gentle heat. Behind the curtain, a small bundle of dried herbs is shifted to catch the sunlight, releasing a soft, calming fragrance. Lavender and rosemary mingle faintly with the lingering smoke, filling the space with a gentle scent that carries a sense of continuity and presence. You inhale slowly, allowing the subtle aromas to anchor your senses and reinforce the calm, unhurried atmosphere. A soft breeze drifts through the open window, rustling the hanging cloths and setting the dust particles swirling gently. Behind the curtain, hands respond with measured care, adjusting objects with precision. You let your attention linger on these small details: the rustle of fabric, the play of light and shadow, the mingled scents carried on the air. The quiet repetition of movements, paired with the sensory richness of the space, draws you further into a steady, contemplative awareness. You walk to the bench and sit, resting your hands lightly on the worn surface. Behind the curtain, mirrored movements continue, subtle and deliberate, contributing to the soft rhythm that fills the room. You notice the warmth on your skin, the gentle light streaming through the windows, and the combined scents of herbs and hearth smoke blending together. Each small gesture and sensory detail builds the steady cadence of the morning, a meditative pattern that requires no words and no urgency. Your gaze falls upon a small jar of dried flowers, the sunlight catching their muted colors and making them glow softly. Behind the curtain, a hand nudges another jar, releasing a faint fragrance that mingles with the warmth of the room. You inhale slowly, allowing the subtle aroma to ground you in the present moment. The gentle repetition of folding, adjusting, and observing continues, each motion reinforcing a soothing, meditative pace. Finally, you lean back slightly on the bench, letting the body settle into its quiet support. The mirrored gestures behind the curtain continue, small and deliberate, weaving a steady, calming rhythm. The warmth, the light, the soft sounds of movement, and the gentle scents surround you in a cocoon of tranquility. You close your eyes briefly, allowing the steady passage of time to fill your awareness, feeling the peaceful cadence of the morning settle deep within. Every subtle movement, Every soft scent, every touch of sunlight carries you further into a gentle, unhurried awareness of presence, and the slow, serene rhythm of the barracks envelops you completely. You rise slowly, feeling the gentle stiffness in your legs ease as the warmth of the barracks floor seeps into your bare feet. The morning sun has shifted higher, casting longer streaks of light across the wooden planks, highlighting tiny imperfections in the worn surface. Dust motes swirl lazily in the shafts of sun, dancing without haste or purpose. You follow their quiet, undulating motion, and your breathing begins to match the gentle rhythm of their drifting patterns. The air carries faint hints of straw, sun-warmed wood, and the lingering scent of herbs, subtly mingling with the faint smoke that lingers from the hearth. Behind the curtain, soft movements continue. A hand shifts a folded cloth with careful attention, fingers brushing over the worn edges, smoothing each fold as if it were a ritual. You mirror these motions instinctively, letting your hands follow a similar pattern across the objects within your reach. The small, deliberate gestures create a shared cadence, a quiet conversation through touch and motion alone. Each fold of linen, each nudge of a jar, is a note in a gentle, unspoken symphony that fills the room with serenity. Your gaze drifts to the low wooden table where simple objects await your attention. A comb with smooth, worn edges, a brush with stiff bristles, a small jar, and a folded linen cloth. You pick up the comb, feeling its gentle contours beneath your fingers, then run the brush lightly over the cloth. Behind the curtain, similar motions respond, a soft, measured harmony of movement that anchors the room in quiet activity. The repetition of these simple gestures has a calming effect, the gentle rhythm carrying your attention away from thought and into the immediacy of sensation. The warmth radiating from the hearth brushes against your arms as you lean closer, resting your palms on the cool stones before drawing them back into the soft heat. Behind the curtain, the faint rustle of movement signals a hand adjusting a bundle of dried herbs to catch the sunlight. The soft fragrance of lavender, rosemary, and dried flowers drifts lazily into the air, mingling with the earthy scent of wood and straw. You inhale slowly, letting the aroma anchor your awareness, each breath reinforcing the calm and steady tempo of the morning. A gentle breeze slips through the open window, causing hanging cloths to sway and stirring tiny eddies of dust. Behind the curtain, small hands respond with careful adjustments, nudging objects into place with deliberate care. You linger on these sensory details, the soft swish of fabric, the interplay of light and shadow, the faint scent of herbs carried on the air. Every small gesture, every subtle shift, reinforces the sense of unhurried attention, a shared intimacy conducted through motion rather than words. You move to the bench and sit, allowing your hands to rest lightly on its worn surface. Behind the curtain, mirrored movements continue, creating a steady rhythm that fills the space. The warmth of sunlight, the gentle aroma of herbs, the soft sounds of movement, and the subtle shift of dust motes compose a quiet orchestra of sensation. You notice the faint texture of the wood beneath your palms, the way the sun warms your shoulders, and the delicate balance of scents lingering in the room. Each detail draws you deeper into a contemplative calm, a quiet observation of the slow passage of time. Your eyes find a small jar of dried flowers on the table. Sunlight catches their muted hues, causing them to glow with a gentle warmth. Behind the curtain, a hand nudges a companion jar, releasing a soft fragrance that blends with the warmth of the room. You inhale deliberately, savoring the mingled scent and allowing it to anchor your awareness in the quiet, meditative rhythm of the morning. The repeated gestures of folding, arranging, and observing form a steady cadence, a soothing loop that encourages a peaceful focus. Finally, you lean back slightly on the bench, letting the body settle fully into its quiet support. The mirrored gestures behind the curtain continue, small, precise, and deliberate, weaving a calm, consistent rhythm. Sunlight, warmth, gentle scents, and the soft, almost imperceptible sounds of movement cocoon you in tranquility. You close your eyes briefly, feeling the unhurried passage of time, letting the delicate harmony of gestures, aromas, and warmth carry you deeper into serene presence. The room holds you gently, each subtle movement, soft fragrance, and golden light guiding your mind into a slow, restful cadence where the quiet intimacy of the morning permeates everything. You stretch your arms slowly, letting the stiffness of the morning release from your shoulders and upper back. The sunlight has shifted again, now warmer and softer, brushing across the floorboards and warming the rough wood under your feet. Tiny flecks of dust drift lazily in the light, spinning and tilting in unhurried arcs. You follow their subtle dance, each turn and drift, drawing your attention away from thought and into the quiet, rhythmic movement of the room. The air carries the familiar sense of straw, faint smoke from the hearth, and the faint, sweet perfume of dried herbs that have settled into the corners of the barracks. Behind the curtain, there is soft, almost imperceptible movement. A hand adjusts the folds of a linen cloth, smoothing each crease with gentle care. You respond with mirrored actions, allowing your hands to follow the same deliberate motions across nearby objects. The repetition is calming, a quiet shared rhythm that requires no words, only attention to the small, tangible details of the space. Each careful fold, each slight nudge of a jar or cloth contributes to the slow, steady pulse of the morning. Your eyes rest on the low wooden table that holds small, familiar objects. A comb, a stiff bristled brush, a small jar, and a neatly folded piece of linen. You pick up the comb and let your fingers trace the smooth edges, then run the brush lightly over the cloth. Behind the curtain, a mirror image occurs, hands move with equal care, creating a quiet dance of repetition and deliberate attention. The motions are soothing, grounding you in the present, each gesture a small act of mindfulness and shared intimacy. The hearth radiates gentle warmth that brushes against your arms and chest. You lean close to feel the heat seep through your sleeves, then draw your hands back into the softer shadows of the room. Behind the curtain, a hand lifts a small bundle of dried herbs into the sunlight. The soft scent of lavender, rosemary, and other dried blossoms drifts into the air, mingling with the warmth from the hearth. You inhale slowly, letting the scent fill your awareness, guiding you deeper into the calm rhythm of the morning. A soft breeze slips in through the open window, stirring hanging cloths and making dust motes twirl in slow eddies. Behind the curtain, delicate adjustments continue, small hands nudging objects into careful alignment. You notice the subtle sounds of fabric brushing against the floor, the muted creak of wood under weight, the interplay of light and shadow across the surfaces. Each observation draws you further into a quiet, reflective attention, where the gentle repetition of movements and sensory details becomes a meditation in itself. You move to the bench and lower yourself onto it, resting your hands lightly on its worn surface. Behind the curtain, mirrored gestures continue, a soft counterpoint to your own. The warmth of sunlight on your shoulders, the faint scent of herbs, and the gentle hush of movement create a slow, steady cadence that fills the space. You notice the textures beneath your fingertips, the soft weight of your body on the bench, and the steady flow of warmth and scent in the room. Each small detail deepens the sense of calm, reinforcing the unhurried pace of the morning. Your gaze settles on a small jar of dried flowers sitting on the table, catching the sunlight and radiating gentle, muted colors. Behind the curtain, another jar is shifted slightly, releasing a faint, sweet aroma that mingles with the warmth and the soft smoke in the air. You inhale deliberately, letting the subtle fragrance anchor you in the shared, quiet rhythm of the space. Folding, arranging, adjusting, these simple gestures continue, each repetition reinforcing a sense of serenity, a gentle loop that carries your mind into a meditative state. Finally, you lean back slightly on the bench, allowing your body to relax fully into its support. The mirrored movements behind the curtain continue, delicate and deliberate, forming a continuous, calming rhythm. Sunlight, warmth, the faint scent of herbs, and the gentle hush of movement cocoon you in a serene, unhurried awareness. You close your eyes briefly, feeling the slow passage of time, the quiet intimacy of the morning, and the gentle cadence of shared, attentive presence. Each soft movement, each tender scent, and each gentle touch of light encourages a deeper calm, carrying you steadily into a quiet, restful state. You rise slowly from the bench, feeling the supple give of the wooden floor beneath your bare feet. The sunlight has drifted higher, softening the shadows that stretch across the room, spilling warm, honeyed light across the worn planks. Dust motes linger in the air, twirling lazily, catching each ray and reflecting it in miniature glimmers that float without urgency. You follow their gentle movements, letting your attention sink into the effortless dance. The room smells faintly of straw, wood warmed by the sun, and the lingering scent of dried herbs that have settled into every corner over time. Behind the curtain, subtle movements continue. A hand shifts a folded cloth, smoothing the edges with patient care. You mimic these motions with your own hands, running your fingers across nearby objects, folding and adjusting with deliberate slowness. Each small, repeated gesture creates a quiet rhythm in the room, a muted conversation through touch rather than words. Every nudge of a jar, every careful fold of fabric, reinforces a shared, unspoken harmony that fills the space. Your gaze moves to the low wooden table that holds simple objects: a comb, a stiff brush, a small jar, and a neatly folded linen cloth. You pick up the comb, feeling its smooth surface beneath your fingers, then gently brush over the linen. Behind the curtain, a mirrored set of motions responds in kind, creating a quiet choreography. The repetition soothes, grounding your attention in the present and in the shared awareness of movement. The room seems to breathe along with the gestures, the soft rustle of fabric and faint creak of wood harmonizing with your own motion. The warmth from the hearth presses gently against your arms as you lean toward it, feeling the heat seep through your clothing before drawing your hands back to cooler shadows. Behind the curtain, a hand lifts a small bundle of dried herbs, allowing it to catch the sunlight. The delicate fragrance of lavender, rosemary, and other dried blossoms drifts lazily, filling the air with a calming, familiar scent. You inhale slowly, letting the aroma anchor your attention, enhancing the serene rhythm of the morning. A soft draft drifts through the open window, stirring hanging cloths and lifting motes of dust into slow, lazy spirals. Behind the curtain, gentle adjustments continue, small hands nudging objects into careful alignment. You focus on the subtle, comforting sounds, the swish of fabric, the muted creak of the floorboards, the soft thrum of sunlight through the room. Every detail strengthens your awareness of the space, each movement and scent guiding you further into a meditative, peaceful state. You sit again on the bench, letting your hands rest lightly on its smooth, worn surface. Behind the curtain, mirrored gestures continue, forming a quiet counterpoint to your own. Sunlight warms your shoulders, the scent of herbs lingers, and the soft rhythm of movement fills the room. You notice the textures beneath your fingertips, the gentle weight of your body on the bench, the way light and warmth mingle. Each small observation deepens your calm, encouraging a slow, steady immersion in the present. Your eyes rest on a small jar of dried flowers, illuminated by the sun and glowing softly with muted colors. Behind the curtain, another jar is nudged, releasing a gentle scent that mingles with the warmth and faint smoke from the hearth. You breathe in deeply, letting the delicate fragrance anchor your focus in the quiet, attentive rhythm of the room. The repeated gestures of folding, arranging, and observing create a loop of calm, reinforcing the gentle pace and quiet intimacy of the morning. Finally, you lean back, settling fully into the bench's support, letting your body absorb the steady warmth and soft light. The mirrored motions behind the curtain continue, delicate and precise, forming a calm, continuous rhythm. Sunlight, scent, and soft sounds cocoon you in unhurried awareness. You close your eyes briefly, savoring the gentle passage of time, the intimacy of quiet shared presence, and the steady cadence of calm gestures. Each motion, scent, and ray of light draws you deeper into a tranquil, reflective state, encouraging a slow, peaceful focus that carries steadily into rest. You rise from the bench with careful deliberation, noticing the subtle give of the wooden floor beneath your feet. Sunlight has climbed further into the room, spilling across the planks in soft amber waves. Dust motes hover in the light, turning slowly as they drift, each one catching the warmth of the sun for just a moment before sinking back into the shadow. You watch them without urgency, letting their languid movement guide your thoughts into a quiet, reflective pace. The air carries the combined scents of straw, sun-warmed wood, and the faint, lingering fragrance of dried herbs tucked in corners. Behind the curtain, gentle motion continues. A hand smooths a cloth with deliberate care, fingers following the weave with slow attention. You replicate the motions elsewhere in the room, folding linen, nudging jars, and adjusting small items with equal care. Each repeated movement establishes a rhythm, quiet but persistent, a dialogue conducted entirely through gesture. Every slight shift of fabric or placement of a jar reinforces the sense of steady calm, the shared presence between you and the unseen companion beyond the curtain. You bend toward the low table, brushing a finger across the smooth surface of a small comb, then lifting a brush to trace over folded cloth. Behind the curtain, mirrored actions echo your own. The coordination is subtle, wordless, yet it deepens your awareness of the room's texture and atmosphere. Sunlight warming the surfaces, gentle creaks in the floor, the soft rustle of fabric, they all blend into a slow, meditative rhythm. The hearth radiates gentle heat, pressing softly against your arms. Leaning near, you allow the warmth to soak into your sleeves before retreating to a cooler patch of floor. Behind the curtain, a hand raises a small bundle of dried herbs into the light. Lavender, rosemary, and other fragrant blossoms release their scent into the warm air, mingling with the faint smokiness from the hearth. You inhale deeply, letting the aroma anchor you in the moment, encouraging your mind to slow in tandem with the deliberate, measured movements around you. A soft draft from the open window nudges hanging fabrics, lifting motes of dust into slow spirals that drift lazily through the room. Behind the curtain, subtle adjustments continue. Cloth is folded, objects nudged into place, small gestures repeated with meticulous care. The faint sounds, the swish of fabric, the soft creak of boards, the gentle sigh of the wind blend into a comforting, predictable cadence. Each detail draws your attention further into calm awareness, anchoring you in the shared rhythm of the room. You settle back on the bench, letting your hands rest lightly on its worn surface. Behind the curtain, mirrored movements persist, forming a gentle counterpoint to your own. Sunlight touches your shoulders, the herbs scent the air, and the soft cadence of movement fills the space. You note the textures beneath your fingers, the weight of your body against the bench, the way shadows shift and stretch across the floor. Each small observation amplifies your sense of calm, encouraging you to sink deeper into the meditative rhythm. Your gaze falls on a small jar of dried flowers catching the sunlight, radiating muted, warm colors. Behind the curtain, a similar jar is nudged slightly, releasing a faint, sweet fragrance that mingles with the warmth and smoky scent of the hearth. You breathe slowly, allowing the smell to anchor your focus, reinforcing the steady, deliberate rhythm of the morning. The repeated motions, arranging, folding, observing, create a gentle loop, a quiet meditation of attention that fills the room with calm and consistency. Finally, you recline on the bench, letting your body sink fully into its support. The soft mirrored motions continue behind the curtain, precise, careful, forming a continuous rhythm of serenity. Sunlight, scent, warmth, and sound cocoon you in a steady awareness. You close your eyes briefly, feeling the slow passage of time, the shared presence of quiet companions, and the gentle cadence of deliberate, unhurried movements. Each small gesture, every faint scent, and the slow sweep of sunlight draw you further into calm reflection, carrying you steadily toward quiet, restful ease. You shift slightly on the bench, feeling the subtle give of the wooden slats beneath you. The sunlight has moved again, stretching longer across the floorboards and bathing the room in a soft, warm glow. Dust motes drift in the light, moving lazily, their slow rotations catching tiny glimmers of gold as they pass. You watch them without thought of urgency, allowing their gentle movements to guide your breathing into an even, deliberate rhythm. The air smells faintly of straw, sun-warmed wood, and a delicate trace of dried lavender, lingering in every corner where it has settled over time. Behind the curtain, subtle movements continue. A hand adjusts a folded cloth, smoothing its edges with gentle precision. You mirror the gestures elsewhere, picking up small objects, folding linen, and nudging items into order. Each repeated action forms a quiet rhythm, a silent conversation conducted entirely through touch and attention. Every movement, no matter how small, reinforces the calm pulse of the room, creating a shared, wordless presence that eases the mind into a slower pace. You bend toward the low wooden table, brushing a fingertip over a comb, then lifting a stiff brush to glide over a folded cloth. Behind the curtain, a mirrored hand performs similar motions. The coordination is quiet, almost imperceptible, yet it anchors your awareness to the textures, scents, and light in the room. The warmth from the hearth presses gently against your forearms as you lean near, soaking in its steady heat before moving back to the cooler shadows. The faint creak of floorboards, the soft rustle of fabric, and the slight sigh of the wind through the open window weave together into a gentle, continuous background melody. A draft drifts through the room, stirring hanging cloths and lifting the dust motes in lazy, spiraling patterns. The scent of herbs rises more clearly, lavender and rosemary intertwining with the faint smokiness of the hearth. You breathe slowly, inhaling the subtle aromas and letting them anchor your attention. Behind the curtain, repeated gestures continue. Cloth is folded with precision, small objects nudged into careful alignment, and hands move with practiced ease. The rhythm is quiet, deliberate, and unhurried, and you sink further into its calm cadence. You rest your hands lightly on the bench's worn surface, noticing the textures beneath your fingers and the slight warmth in the wood from the sun. Behind the curtain, mirrored movements persist, a gentle counterpoint to your own actions. You watch the shifting light, the small dust motes, the way the shadows stretch and contract. Each detail draws your mind into slow observation, further deepening the sense of calm that has settled over the room. Your eyes rest on a small jar of dried flowers glowing softly in the sunlight. Behind the curtain, another jar is nudged slightly, releasing a faint fragrance that mingles with the warmth from the hearth. You breathe deeply, letting the scent settle over you, reinforcing the steady, meditative rhythm that has developed over the morning. Each repeated motion, folding, arranging, adjusting, is a small, deliberate anchor, keeping your mind tethered to the present, to the shared attention and gentle cadence of the space. Finally, you recline slightly, letting your body sink fully into the support of the bench. The mirrored motions continue behind the curtain, precise, quiet, and continuous. Sunlight, warmth, scent, and soft ambient sounds cocoon you in steady awareness. Closing your eyes briefly, you feel the gentle passage of time, the comfort of shared silent presence, and the soothing rhythm of slow, deliberate movements. Each small detail, the softness of fabric, the lingering fragrance of herbs, the shifting sunbeams, draws you deeper into calm reflection, carrying you steadily toward the quiet ease of rest. You rise slowly from the bench, letting your feet find the familiar grooves in the wooden floor. Each step is soft, deliberate, as if the room itself is urging you to move in time with its quiet rhythm. Sunlight stretches across the planks, shifting gently as the day leans further toward afternoon. Dust motes drift lazily in the warm light, spinning and tumbling, each catching the sun for a brief golden moment before sinking again into the shadowed corners. You watch without hurry, inhaling the faint aroma of straw, wood, and the lingering hint of dried lavender and thyme tucked into shelves and jars. Behind the curtain, motions continue with soft consistency. A hand smooths a folded cloth, fingers tracing the weave with patient care. You mirror these small gestures elsewhere, adjusting a bundle of herbs, nudging a small jar into alignment, brushing the edge of a low table. The movements are quiet, almost ceremonial, forming a gentle rhythm that fills the space without words. Each repetition anchors you to the room, to its textures, light, and warmth, reinforcing a calm and steady awareness that expands with each passing moment. You bend to lift a small brush from the table, running its bristles lightly over a folded linen. The mirrored actions behind the curtain echo your movements, subtle but precise. The warmth from the hearth presses softly against your arms, comforting and steady, as you pull back slightly to observe the interplay of light, shadow, and motion. The soft creak of the floor, the faint rustle of cloth, and the occasional sigh of the wind through the open window blend into a soothing, predictable cadence. The draft stirs the hanging fabrics gently, lifting tiny dust motes into spiraling arcs. Behind the curtain, careful adjustments continue. Cloth is smoothed, small objects nudged, hands moving with deliberate grace. The slow rhythm of repeated gestures carries a quiet assurance. Sunlight touches the edges of the room, highlighting the soft golds and browns of wooden surfaces and the muted greens and purples of dried herbs. Each detail is deliberate, measured, yet comforting in its predictability. You let your fingers linger on the bench's worn surface, noting the subtle textures beneath your touch and the faint warmth held by the wood. Behind the curtain, mirrored motions persist, a silent conversation conducted entirely through repeated, precise actions. You observe the shifting light, the way shadows stretch and fade, the subtle movements of the motes in the air. Each observation draws your mind further into the present, encouraging a gentle stillness, a deepened calm that fills your senses completely. A small jar of dried flowers glimmers softly in the sunlight, releasing its delicate fragrance into the warm air. Behind the curtain, another jar is moved slightly, the motion stirring a faint, sweet aroma. You inhale slowly, letting the scent anchor your awareness and reinforce the steady rhythm that fills the room. Each small action folding, adjusting, smoothing, forms a comforting loop, a meditation of movement and attention. The cadence of the space, the warmth, the sunlight, and the scents coalesce into a gentle, continuous lull, easing your mind and body toward rest. Finally, you settle back on the bench, letting your weight sink fully into its support. The mirrored motions continue with quiet precision behind the curtain. Sunlight, warmth, scent, and subtle ambient sounds cocoon you in steady, meditative awareness. Closing your eyes briefly, you feel the slow passage of time, the comfort of shared, silent presence, and the soothing rhythm of measured gestures. Each detail, the soft rustle of fabric, the shifting dust in sunlight, the lingering fragrance of herbs draws you deeper into calm reflection. You breathe slowly, letting the unhurried pace of the room carry you gently toward quiet, restful ease. You stand quietly for a moment, letting the warmth of the sun wash over your shoulders. The light has softened now, drifting across the wooden floor in a slow, lazy arc, stretching shadows toward the corners of the room. Dust motes rise in the sunbeams, spinning gently as they drift, catching the light in fleeting glimmers that vanish as quickly as they appear. The air carries the subtle scents of straw, dried lavender, and sun-warmed wood, lingering in every nook and cranny where the sun has lingered longest. You inhale deeply, letting the aroma settle softly into your senses, grounding you in the quiet presence of the barracks. Behind the curtain, quiet movements continue with deliberate rhythm. A hand adjusts a folded cloth, smoothing its edges with care, while another fingers the rim of a small jar, tracing the contours as if memorizing its shape. You follow with your own small gestures, picking up a bundle of herbs, letting the warmth from your palm seep into the dried leaves, folding the fabric over again and again until it lies perfectly even. Each repeated motion reinforces the rhythm, forming a silent conversation between you and the room, between you and the presence hidden behind the curtain. Your feet press softly against the worn wood, finding familiar grooves and imperfections that guide each step. You move toward a low shelf where small jars of dried flowers and herbs sit in quiet arrangement. Behind the curtain, mirrored gestures echo your movements. A jar is nudged forward, another adjusted just so, hands tracing the contours of objects with deliberate care. You reach for a bundle of rosemary, letting its delicate fragrance rise and mingle with the faint smoke lingering from the hearth. The scent is calming, grounding you further into the gentle rhythm of your surroundings. The soft creak of floorboards accompanies each step, blending with the occasional whisper of the wind through the open window. You feel the warmth of the sunlight on your back and the cooler shadows along the far wall, a subtle contrast that makes the room feel alive, breathing with you. Behind the curtain, hands continue to move in careful repetition, folding, adjusting, smoothing. You pause to observe the interplay of light and shadow, the way sunbeams stretch across the floorboards, and how the dust motes dance slowly in response. Each detail is small, measured, yet profoundly soothing. You pick up a small cloth, folded neatly and lightly scented with lavender, and smooth it once more over the edge of the low table. Behind the curtain, similar movements persist, as though a quiet mirror reflects each of your actions. The warmth of the hearth presses gently against your arms, comforting and steady, while the sunlight flickers over the wooden surfaces. You let your attention rest on the small gestures, tracing the motions in your mind, feeling the repetition settle into a slow, hypnotic cadence that eases tension from your body. Dust motes float in spiraling arcs, their movement dictated by the faintest drafts drifting in from the open window. You watch them drift without hurry, letting each rise and fall, each twist and turn, draw your attention into a slower, more deliberate rhythm. The faint scent of dried flowers and herbs mingles with the lingering smoke of the hearth, creating a subtle, layered aroma that anchors you to the present. Behind the curtain, the hands continue their quiet, precise motions, a soft, silent dialogue carried entirely through repetition and attention. You bend slightly, adjusting a small bundle of dried lavender that has shifted with the warmth of the sun. The fabric beneath it is smooth, worn, and comforting to touch. Behind the curtain, a hand mimics the motion, smoothing another bundle with equal care. The mirrored actions reinforce the shared quietness of the space, the gentle presence of someone else close yet unseen. Each fold, each adjustment, each small motion forms a subtle rhythm that spreads through the room, carrying calmness with it. Your fingertips brush over the worn surface of a low wooden table, feeling the subtle textures and the warmth retained from sunlight. You pause to trace the grain of the wood, letting your attention linger on its small details. The faint ridges, the tiny scratches, the smooth patches where hands have passed countless times before. Behind the curtain, repeated gestures continue. Cloth is smoothed, jars nudged slightly, small objects aligned with quiet precision. You feel a sense of connection, a gentle presence made tangible through the mirrored movements and the shared rhythm of attention. You notice the faint shadows stretching along the walls, elongated and softened by the late afternoon sun. The dust motes shimmer in the light, each rise and fall a tiny spectacle of motion. You inhale slowly, feeling the scent of sun-warmed straw, dried herbs, and subtle hints of lavender fill your lungs and settle into your chest. Behind the curtain, careful movements persist, folding, nudging, adjusting. Each repetition reinforces the serene rhythm of the room, a quiet cadence that encourages your body to slow its pace to match the measured, deliberate energy of the space. You step toward the hearth, brushing a finger along its edge and feeling the residual warmth from the slowly fading fire. A faint curl of smoke rises, carrying with it the subtle aroma of burned wood and a soft reminder of the steady heat. Behind the curtain, mirrored hands continue their gentle motions, smoothing fabric, aligning jars, adjusting the smallest details of the room. The interplay of sunlight, shadow, warmth, and scent creates a layered tapestry of sensation, each element reinforcing the slow, deliberate rhythm of your movements. You reach for a small bundle of dried thyme, letting the delicate leaves rub gently between your fingers. Its subtle aroma rises, mixing with lavender and rosemary, and with the faint, lingering smoke from the hearth. Behind the curtain, hands repeat similar gestures, a quiet echo of your own movements. Each repeated action, each careful adjustment, forms a gentle loop, a meditative cadence that fills the room and encourages your mind to rest. The soft rustle of fabric, the shifting light, the delicate fragrances all converge into a steady, calming presence that settles over you. You pause at the low bench, running your fingers along its edge, feeling the warmth and subtle unevenness of the worn wood. Sunlight continues to drift, lengthening and softening across the floorboards, and the dust motes rise and fall, spiraling slowly in the shafts of light. Behind the curtain, mirrored movements continue, folding, smoothing, adjusting. Each gesture reinforces the quiet, deliberate pace of the room. The interplay of light, scent, sound, and movement draws your attention fully into the present, letting the gentle rhythm of small actions settle into your mind and body. A small jar of dried flowers glints softly in the sunlight, and you lift it gently, inhaling the subtle fragrance as you set it down again. Behind the curtain, similar motions echo your actions. Another jar is adjusted, a bundle of fabric smoothed. The repetition forms a quiet conversation, unspoken yet profoundly present, connecting your awareness to the rhythm of the room. You feel the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the faint draft from the open window, the subtle scent of herbs and flowers, and the residual heat of the hearth blending together into a serene, unhurried presence. You kneel slightly to adjust a folded cloth on the floor, smoothing the edges with delicate, deliberate care. Behind the curtain, mirrored hands replicate the gestures, each action measured, precise, and quiet. The dust motes rise in lazy arcs, sunlight illuminating their slow movements. The scents of lavender, rosemary, thyme, and sun-warmed wood intermingle, creating a layered sensory tapestry that envelops you. Each motion, repeated with care, forms a quiet meditation, anchoring you in the gentle rhythm of the room, the warmth of the sun, and the presence of someone else close, yet unseen. You pause to watch the sunlight filter through a small window, casting soft shadows across the floor. The air is calm, the scents rich and subtle, the room alive with gentle, repetitive motion. Behind the curtain, hands continue to fold, smooth, and adjust, forming a mirror to your own deliberate movements. You feel a deepening calm, a sense of time slowing, as each small gesture reinforces the rhythm of the space. Dust motes rise and fall in spirals, the sunlight warms your shoulders, the faint scent of herbs settles over you, and the quiet repetition of movements carries your mind steadily toward a gentle, meditative ease. Finally, you lean back slightly against the low bench, feeling the warmth of the wood and the soft pull of the sun across your shoulders. Behind the curtain, motions continue with quiet precision, echoing the rhythm you have settled into. The combination of sunlight, scent, warmth, soft fabric, and repeated, careful gestures forms a cocoon of gentle presence. Closing your eyes for a moment, you let the calm deepen. Each small motion, each delicate scent, each gentle sound, each subtle shift of sunlight guides your mind and body toward restful awareness. The slow, measured cadence of the room carries you onward, a serene current of quiet movement and sensory detail that invites peaceful stillness. You rise from the low bench with a careful, measured motion, letting your fingertips trail along the warm wood as you shift your weight. The sunlight has shifted further, lengthening shadows across the floor, softening the edges of the room with gentle golden light. Dust motes float lazily in the sunbeams, caught in spiraling arcs as they rise and fall. Each small movement of air makes them sway ever so slightly, and you find yourself following their motion, tracing them with slow, deliberate attention, feeling a quiet calm settle into your chest. The warmth of the sun presses lightly against your back, the fabric of your sleeves soft and familiar under your fingers. You take a slow step toward the window, pausing to feel the slight cool of the stone windowsill beneath your palm. Outside, the faint rustle of leaves moves through the air, bringing with it the soft scent of grass and the distant faint sweetness of blooms that have been kissed by sunlight. Each tiny detail grounds you in the quiet present, carrying your senses gently along a calm, unhurried path. Behind the curtain, The familiar, mirrored presence continues its delicate rhythm. A hand folds a small bundle of linen with the same careful precision as your own, smoothing the edges again and again, while another fingers the rim of a small ceramic jar, memorizing the contour and weight. There is no urgency, no sudden movement, only the repetition of careful, attentive motions that allow the mind to settle and follow the quiet cadence of the room. You move slowly toward a low shelf where small wooden boxes and bundles of dried herbs are arranged in neat rows. Each item has its place, each bundle carefully wrapped, and each jar set just so. Your fingers brush lightly across the edges of the boxes, feeling the subtle grain of the wood and the warmth retained from the sunlight. Behind the curtain, the mirrored motions continue. Hands nudge objects into alignment, smooth fabric, adjust bundles, forming a quiet dialogue of deliberate care. The repetition forms a rhythm as gentle and steady as the rise and fall of your own breath. A faint breeze drifts through the open window, carrying the soft scent of herbs and sun-warmed stone. The air moves lightly around you, lifting dust motes into lazy spirals, each catching the sunlight and glowing briefly before drifting away again. You inhale slowly, letting the layered scents settle softly into your senses, grounding you further into the present. Each small gesture, reaching for a bundle of lavender, smoothing a folded cloth, aligning a jar, becomes an anchor, a gentle reminder of the calm, unhurried world you inhabit in this quiet, sunlit room. Your fingertips brush over the rim of a small clay jar, feeling the subtle imperfections and the warmth it has absorbed from the sunlight. Behind the curtain, hands replicate similar gestures, adjusting a bundle of dried flowers, tracing the edges of a low wooden box. The mirrored motions create a rhythm, a soft, continuous echo that carries through the space, inviting your mind to match its deliberate pace. Each movement is slow and exact, reinforcing a meditative cadence that drifts through the room and into your awareness. You pause at the hearth, letting your fingers trace the smooth edge of the worn stone. The faint, lingering scent of the fire mingles with herbs and sun-warmed wood, forming a layered aroma that feels steady and familiar. Behind the curtain, similar careful adjustments continue. Fabric smoothed, bundles rearranged, small jars nudged gently into place. You allow yourself to linger on each sound, each scent, each texture, feeling the slow, deliberate rhythm of small actions surround and settle around you. Sunlight falls across the low bench where you were seated earlier, casting long, soft shadows across the floorboards. Dust motes spiral in the gentle light, and you follow them with slow, deliberate attention, watching as they rise and fall in delicate art. Behind the curtain, repeated gestures continue, smoothing, folding, adjusting. Each mirrored motion reinforces the rhythm of the room, and you feel a subtle relaxation spread from your fingertips, through your arms, into your shoulders, and down into your chest. You step gently toward a small wooden tray set near the window, lined with tiny jars and bundles of herbs. Your hands hover briefly above the objects, feeling the slight warmth retained from the sun. Carefully, deliberately, you adjust a bundle of rosemary, letting its scent rise and blend with the subtle fragrances lingering in the room. Behind the curtain, similar gestures occur, hands smoothing fabric, nudging jars, folding and arranging small bundles with meticulous care. Each repetition reinforces the calm cadence, and your awareness drifts slowly, following the gentle rhythm of deliberate motion. The faint rustle of leaves outside blends with the soft creak of floorboards beneath your feet, forming a subtle soundtrack to the room's quiet rhythm. Dust motes continue their lazy dance in the sunbeams, each rising and falling with unhurried grace. You pause to let the warmth of the sunlight settle into your shoulders and back, to let the scent of herbs fill your lungs, and to let the quiet repetition of mirrored gestures behind the curtain sink into your mind. The world outside fades slightly, leaving only the measured cadence of soft motion, gentle warmth, and layered scent within the room. You kneel briefly to adjust a small cloth on the floor, smoothing its edges with the same meticulous care that has guided your motions all afternoon. Behind the curtain, hands continue to mirror your movements, folding, adjusting, and arranging bundles and jars. The repetition is slow and deliberate, forming a quiet meditation that carries through the room. Sunlight softens as it moves further across the floor, the dust motes drifting in lazy spirals, each detail drawing your attention and inviting a gentle, rhythmic focus. Finally, you lean against the low bench, letting your body rest lightly as the warmth of the sun continues to bathe your shoulders and back. Behind the curtain, movements continue quietly, each mirrored gesture echoing your own gentle rhythm. The faint scent of herbs, the lingering warmth from the hearth, the soft light shifting across floorboards, and the continuous measured motions of small hands all form a cocoon of calm presence. Your awareness drifts slowly, carried by the repetition and softness of the room, until a gentle stillness fills your mind, drawing you further into quiet, meditative ease. You rise slowly from the low bench, feeling the weight of the afternoon settle lightly on your shoulders. The sunlight has shifted, casting elongated patterns across the floorboards, painting the room in shades of soft gold. Dust motes hover lazily in the light, floating in gentle spirals as if caught in some invisible dance. You follow them with your eyes, tracing the arcs they make through the quiet air, noticing the subtle way the light refracts against each tiny speck. The world seems to slow in these moments, each movement deliberately small, each sound muted by the calm hum of a late afternoon. Behind the thin curtain, the familiar mirrored presence continues its quiet choreography. Hands move slowly over the fabric of neatly folded linens, smoothing edges, and adjusting the folds with meticulous care. Small jars of dried herbs are nudged gently into place, their lids clicked closed with barely a sound. Each action is repeated, measured, a soft echo of your own deliberate motions across the room. You feel the rhythm resonate with your breath, the rise and fall of your chest matching the steady pace of folding, smoothing, arranging. The scent of the day lingers, dried lavender, thyme, and faint traces of rosemary from the bundles you've handled. It mingles with the warmth of sun-warmed wood and the faint tang of the stone hearth, creating a layered aroma that is calming and grounding. You let it fill your awareness, inhaling slowly, letting the small details anchor you firmly in the present. The rhythmic gestures behind the curtain continue without interruption. A hand adjusts a bundle of herbs, another smooths a cloth, a tiny movement repeated until it is precisely right. Each action reinforces the gentle pulse of quiet in the room. You step toward the window, your bare feet brushing softly against the cool floorboards. Your fingers trail lightly along the stone sill, feeling its slight roughness and residual warmth from the sun. Outside, leaves stir in a faint breeze, rustling with a soothing, irregular pattern. The air carries the faint sweetness of nearby blooms, and you close your eyes briefly, letting the scent and sound blend with the quiet rhythm inside. Behind the curtain, a hand tilts a small jar slightly, inspecting its contents, then replaces it with care, another small action in the ongoing cadence. You move to a low shelf, your fingers brushing over the edges of neatly stacked wooden boxes and bundles of dried flowers. Each object has a place, each bundle a reason to be exactly where it rests. You lift a small box, feeling its light weight and warm texture, then set it down again, adjusting its alignment until it is just so. Behind the curtain, mirrored movements follow, linen smoothed, bundles adjusted, jars shifted slightly. The repetition forms a gentle meditation, a soft current that flows through the room and into your awareness. A slight breeze drifts through the open window, lifting dust motes in spiraling patterns and carrying the subtle fragrance of herbs and warm stone. You pause for a moment, letting your hand hover over a small bundle of lavender, inhaling its soothing scent. The mirrored hands behind the curtain continue their careful movements, smoothing, nudging, folding. Each gesture is deliberate, slow, unhurried, forming a quiet dialogue between your own small, precise actions and the echoed motions just beyond the thin fabric. You return to the hearth, your fingers tracing the worn stone edges, feeling the faint residual warmth from the fire earlier in the day. The air carries the soft scent of lingering smoke mingled with herbs and the sun-warmed wood. Behind the curtain, hands continue their mirrored motions, folding cloth, nudging jars, adjusting bundles. You allow your awareness to drift with the rhythm, each repetition deepening the sense of calm, the gentle pulse of deliberate, unhurried care filling the room. Sunlight stretches further across the floor, highlighting dust motes that drift in lazy, spiraling paths. You watch them, following their slow arcs, feeling the quiet steadiness of the space settle around your chest and shoulders. Behind the curtain, mirrored gestures continue with the same deliberate pace. Small hands smooth cloth, adjust bundles and nudge jars. The repetition forms a gentle, meditative rhythm, each motion echoing softly through the room and into your awareness. You pause near a small tray lined with jars and bundles of herbs, your fingertips brushing lightly across the objects. Each one has its place, its texture, its faint, familiar scent. You adjust a bundle of rosemary with careful precision, feeling the subtle roughness beneath your fingertips, and inhale the mingled aromas. Behind the curtain, mirrored motions follow. Linen smoothed, jars nudged slightly, bundles adjusted. Each repetition strengthens the calm rhythm, the quiet cadence of deliberate small movements weaving through the sunlit room. Finally, you settle back onto the low bench, letting your shoulders relax and your breath lengthen. The sunlight warms your back and shoulders, dust motes continue their slow, lazy dance in the air, and the soft mirrored gestures behind the curtain continue their unhurried rhythm. Each small motion, the smoothing of cloth, the adjusting of jars, the folding of herbs, forms a continuous, meditative pulse that carries through the room. You let yourself drift gently into the quiet, letting the sun-warmed textures, gentle scents, and deliberate, rhythmic movements guide your awareness towards stillness and peace. You shift slightly on the low bench, the wood creaking ever so softly beneath your weight, a faint reminder of its age and frequent use. The sunlight has dimmed just a touch, turning the golden rays into a muted amber that stretches lazily across the floor. Dust motes hover in the quiet light, drifting in slow, irregular patterns, spiraling like tiny dancers caught in invisible current. Your eyes follow them without effort, tracing their gentle arcs, letting your awareness settle into their slow, patient rhythm. Behind the thin curtain, mirrored hands continue their quiet work, adjusting linen folds, nudging bundles of dried herbs, and aligning small jars with a meticulous precision that seems almost ceremonious in its repetition. You lean forward, resting your elbows on your knees, and breathe in deeply. The air carries a faint mix of sun-warmed stone, dried herbs, and lingering smoke from the earlier fire. The scents mingle seamlessly, creating a quiet, grounding aroma that settles in your chest. You allow the warmth of the sunlight and the layered fragrances to anchor your attention, feeling your shoulders loosen and your mind drift further into calm. Behind the curtain, soft movements continue, small gestures repeated with careful intent. A hand smooths a linen edge, another jar is nudged a fraction closer to its neighbors. A bundle of thyme is adjusted so that its twine lies perfectly aligned. Each action echoes the slow cadence of your own movements, forming a gentle dialogue between your awareness and the mirrored activity behind the curtain. A slight breeze drifts through the open window, brushing against your skin and carrying the faint scent of nearby blooms. You lift a hand, letting your fingers trace the patterns of sunlight on the floor, feeling the subtle warmth and the texture of the boards beneath your fingertips. Behind the curtain, the mirrored hands follow their ritual, the repetition soothing in its constancy. Linen is folded and refolded, herbs are nudged and adjusted, jars are shifted slightly and then left to rest. You notice the quiet precision of each gesture, the way the small actions seem to breathe life into the otherwise still room. You rise and take a slow step toward the window, feeling the coolness of the stone sill beneath your palm. Outside, the leaves of a nearby tree sway gently, creating a soft rustling sound that blends with the faint creak of the boards beneath your feet. The air feels clean, carrying a subtle hint of earthiness and greenery. You inhale deeply, letting the outdoor scents mix with the warm, herb-laden air inside. Behind the curtain, the mirrored movements continue unabated. Hands smoothing cloth, nudging bundles, and arranging jars with careful deliberation. Each repeated gesture becomes a part of the quiet, comforting rhythm of the room, reinforcing the steady pulse that seems to guide your own breath. You return to the bench, letting your hands rest lightly on your knees, and notice the way the sunlight has shifted, casting long shadows across the floor. Dust motes drift lazily through the amber light, catching and refracting it in delicate flashes. The mirrored hands behind the curtain continue their precise choreography, each movement measured, intentional, and deliberate. Linen is adjusted, herbs are aligned, and jars are repositioned, forming a gentle, meditative cadence that fills the space with a soft, quiet energy. You watch the patterns of light, the slow dance of dust, and the repeated, careful motions behind the curtain, letting them lull your mind toward rest. A faint tapping sound reaches your ears, perhaps a loose shutter or a small stone nudging against the window frame, blending seamlessly into the quiet ambience. You allow yourself to notice it without thought or concern, letting it become part of the room's gentle orchestra. Behind the curtain, hands continue their ritual, the folds of cloth shifting imperceptibly, the jars and bundles settling into their precise places with care. The repetition is soothing, the soft cadence of intentional, small movements forming a meditative pattern that resonates through the quiet room. You rise once more, taking a slow, deliberate step toward the corner where a small basket of herbs rests. Your fingers trace the rough edges of the basket, lifting a bundle of thyme and inhaling its faintly pungent aroma. You set it back down with gentle care, aligning it perfectly with the others. Behind the curtain, mirrored movements echo your own, the small hands adjusting linen folds, nudging jars, and realigning herb bundles. The quiet symmetry of these actions creates a sense of continuity and calm, the repeated gestures forming a gentle, steady pulse that fills your awareness. Finally, you return to the bench, sitting down with a soft sigh. Your shoulders relax, and your breath slows as the sunlight warms your back. Dust motes drift lazily through the amber light, the quiet scent of herbs and stone filling your senses. Behind the curtain, the mirrored gestures continue, small, precise, and unhurried. Linen is smoothed, jars are nudged, herbs are adjusted. The repetition forms a quiet meditation, a rhythm that carries through the room and settles into your own awareness, wrapping you in a gentle, unbroken calm. You let your gaze drift to the far corner of the room, where a small bundle of lavender rests, tied neatly with twine. You breathe in its delicate aroma, letting it mingle with the warmth of the sun and the faint scent of stone and wood. The mirrored hands behind the curtain continue their quiet ritual, each small movement deliberate and slow, echoing the steady pulse of your own calm. The room seems to breathe with you, the repetition of motion, light, scent, and warmth, forming a soft, continuous lullaby that carries you further into stillness. You settle back onto the low wooden bench, letting the quiet tension of movement slip from your shoulders. The room has grown slightly cooler, a delicate whisper of the late afternoon seeping through the open shutters. Sunlight has softened further, brushing the floorboards with muted amber, highlighting tiny scratches, small knots in the wood, and traces of dust that float lazily in the air. Each particle seems to move with its own rhythm, drifting in slow spirals, rising, falling, and catching the waning light as though performing a quiet dance just for you. Behind the curtain, small hands continue their subtle work. Linen is folded again and again, each crease smoothed with deliberate care. Jars are nudged, herbs aligned, and bundles of dried flowers repositioned with gentle precision. The slow, repeated gestures echo in your mind, forming a steady cadence that matches your own breath. You notice the faint scent of warmed wood mingling with the herbaceous aromas from the baskets. Thyme, lavender, and something sharper, like rosemary, each scent layered delicately upon the next. You reach a hand toward a small bundle of thyme, inhaling deeply, and the scent settles warmly in your chest. Behind the curtain, Mirrored movements maintain their quiet rhythm. Linen folds are adjusted once more, a jar tilted slightly, and then returned to its precise place. Each repetition seems minor, but together it forms a subtle rhythm that fills the room and, somehow, fills you as well. Rising slowly, you step toward the far corner, where a narrow wooden table holds several clay jars, each capped carefully with cork. Your fingers brush the rims, feeling the texture of the clay, smooth with minor imperfections that hint at handcraft. Light catches the rims, throwing soft shadows onto the table. The air is still, only broken by the quiet creaks of floorboards and the soft brush of movement behind the curtain. There is no urgency here, no external noise demanding attention. Each motion, each inhalation, each glance is absorbed fully by the room. You pause at the table, watching the gentle sway of a small hanging lantern. Though it remains unlit, sunlight bends around it, casting a soft halo of light that dances quietly on the nearby wall. Dust motes continue their silent ballet, and the hands behind the curtain fold and shift, nudging the herbs and linens with exact care. You allow yourself to follow the pattern without expectation, simply noting each movement, each gentle sound, each faint scent. The repetition is not monotonous. It is a quiet reassurance, a rhythm that invites stillness. Stepping back to the bench, you feel the gentle warmth of sunlight on your back, the cool air brushing your arms, and the faint texture of the bench beneath your hands. Behind the curtain, mirrored gestures continue. Linen folds, herb bundles, jars, each small act done with care and attention. There is no rush, no abrupt changes. Even as your eyes wander to the far wall, noting the rough plaster and the faint traces of previous paint, your mind remains calm, synchronized to the gentle, slow rhythm of the mirrored hand. You lean forward, resting your elbows on your knees, and let your gaze drift over the scattered tools of the room. A small wooden comb, a folded cloth, a clay jar with a narrow neck. Each object is ordinary, but together they form a kind of quiet intimacy, a still life of simple domesticity. Behind the curtain, the rhythm continues, hands adjusting, smoothing, nudging. You allow your breathing to match that rhythm, slow and deliberate, in and out, matched to the careful repetition that fills the room. A faint draft passes through the open window, carrying the smell of earth and greenery from the small garden outside. You lift a hand to brush across the sill, feeling the rough wood and the gentle warmth from the sun. The dust motes twist in the air, and for a moment, you simply watch them, letting them fill your vision, your mind, and your sense of time. Behind the curtain, hands continue their ritual, folding and refolding cloth, nudging jars and herbs into place. Each gesture is a quiet meditation, a soft punctuation in the stillness. You lower yourself back onto the bench fully, feeling your back press into the wood and your legs relax. The sunlight continues its gentle descent, moving slowly across the floor, brushing against the jars and bundles, illuminating the delicate fibers of the linen. The air is calm, filled with faint scents, soft sounds, and the gentle rhythm of repeated motions behind the curtain. Each fold, each nudge, each adjustment is deliberate enough that your mind can trace it easily, following the soft cadence as it drifts lazily across the room. You close your eyes for a moment, inhaling deeply, and the calm of the room, the steady rhythm, and the quiet presence of life behind the curtain carries you further into gentle rest. You rise slowly, aware of the subtle shifts in light as the sun dips lower, brushing the room with warm amber gold hues. The shadows stretch longer, pooling softly in corners and beneath furniture, while the air carries a faint coolness that hints at evening. You take a deep breath, the mingled scents of sun-warmed wood, dried herbs, and faintly sweet linen curling gently through your senses, grounding you in the quiet intimacy of the space. Behind the curtain, small, careful movements continue, a hand brushing a fold of cloth, nudging a jar just slightly, shifting a bundle of herbs with deliberate care. Each motion is unhurried, rhythmic, and entirely unremarkable, yet it anchors the space in calm repetition, a steady cadence that mirrors the ebbing light. You step slowly toward the window, letting your fingers trail along the rough-hewn sill, feeling the contrast between the lingering warmth of the sun and the coolness of the stone beneath. Outside, the branches of a nearby tree sway in the gentlest breeze, their leaves whispering in quiet, intermittent rustles. The faint murmur blends with the soft creak of floorboards under your feet and the barely perceptible shuffle of movements behind the curtain, creating a layered symphony of gentle sound. You lean slightly, watching sunlight catch on the edges of jars and the folds of linen, tracing the tiny imperfections and textures that speak quietly of human care and attention. Turning your gaze inward, you notice the small details scattered across the low table and shelves. A clay jar with faint fingerprints pressed into its surface, a folded cloth with fraying edges, bundles of herbs tied with thin string, all arranged with deliberate neatness. Behind the curtain, mirrored hands repeat these gestures, lifting, nudging, aligning with meticulous care. There is no rush, no urgency, only a continuous stream of understated activity, a quiet choreography that extends through the room and, for a moment, through your own steady, measured movements. You take a small step back, letting your attention drift over the entire room, noting the interplay of light and shadow, the stillness punctuated by soft, methodical sounds. Your eyes catch the faint gleam of a narrow lantern that hangs unlit near the far corner, its metal frame warm with reflected sunlight. Dust motes swirl lazily in the slanting rays, catching and scattering the light as if performing their own quiet ritual. Behind the curtain, every fold and nudge is deliberate and slow, each adjustment made with exact care. You find yourself attuned to the rhythm, matching your breath to the subtle cyclical motions. A gentle draft brushes across your arms, carrying with it the earthy scent of the courtyard outside and the faint floral notes of the herbs within. You inhale deeply, letting the aroma fill your chest and settle in your mind. Behind the curtain, hands continue their soft dance, folding, nudging, adjusting, each movement echoed faintly in your own awareness. The room feels suspended in a space of quiet equilibrium, where time is measured not by the hours but by the gentle repetition of ordinary acts. You sink down onto the bench once more, feeling the smooth, worn wood beneath your palms and the warmth of the sun as it drifts across your back. You watch the shadows stretch and lengthen, mingling with the amber light to form patterns across floor and wall. Behind the curtain, the soft, persistent rhythm continues. Linen folds, herbs shifted, jars aligned, all performed with the same careful attention that has defined the day. You close your eyes briefly, allowing the repetition, the light, and the quiet scent of the room to settle you further, each detail sinking into your awareness like a soft, gentle hum. As evening deepens, the light wanes and the warmth cools, but the calm persists. You feel the slow descent of the day, the gentle fading of sound, and the softened edges of color. The room's rhythm remains constant, the repeated movements behind the curtain, the steady touch of sunlight on wood, the faint swirl of air carrying scents, all forming a cocoon of quietude. You breathe in slowly and exhale, letting each inhalation and exhalation mirror the unhurried, careful gestures around you. You allow your gaze to soften, letting details blur slightly as your mind drifts along the quiet channels of the room, the warmth of sunlight, the subtle scent of dried herbs, the tactile presence of linen and wood, the repeated gestures behind the curtain, the gentle shifting of shadows, and the faint hum of the outside breeze create a lullaby without sound, a gentle, unbroken pulse that guides you steadily toward rest. You feel your eyelids grow heavy, your body aligning with the unhurried flow, each small, repetitive action reinforcing the calm that has filled the day. With a final deep breath, you settle fully, letting the room's gentle rhythm enfold you. The hands behind the curtain continue their quiet, measured dance. The sunlight softens further, and the scents mingle one last time. You are immersed fully in this slow, quiet world, your body and mind surrendering to the unbroken cadence of ordinary care, the hum of stillness, and the lingering warmth of the day's golden light. The room grows gradually dimmer, the sunlight softened to faint streaks that glide along the floor and walls. Dust motes drift lazily in the quiet haze, spinning and falling with gentle inevitability. You feel the texture of the wooden bench beneath your hands, the faint roughness grounding you, while the gentle scent of dried herbs lingers, mingling with the cooling warmth of the late day. The hands behind the curtain continue their careful, deliberate movements, folding linen, nudging jars, adjusting small bundles, unhurried, repeated, soothing. Each gesture is mirrored by your breath, slow and measured, inhaling, exhaling, a soft rhythm that matches the pulse of the room. The air itself seems to settle, carrying the faint hum of the outside world leaves stirring, a distant bird calling once, and the whisper of a small breeze brushing the shutters. Shadows lengthen and soften, blending with the warm, muted light, creating gentle gradients across floorboards, walls, and objects. The room feels suspended, timeless, a space where care, repetition, and stillness have created a quiet sanctuary. As you allow your gaze to soften, the contours of jars, linens, herbs, and wood blur slightly, the details merging into an overall sense of calm. Your body relaxes, each muscle releasing tension, and your mind drifts slowly alongside the silent, repeated gestures of the room. Time seems to stretch, measured only by gentle inhalations and exhalations, the soft movements behind the curtain, and the fading warmth of sunlight. In this slow, deliberate quiet, you feel entirely present, entirely contained within the gentle rhythm of ordinary life. The room, the scents, the faint sounds, and the steady, repeated motions all coalesce into a lullaby of calm. You sink further into rest, carried by the persistent, gentle cadence, and the day, simple and unhurried, drifts softly to an end. We hope this glimpse into old customs has been a calm and pleasant one. If it made you curious for more, you can like, share, or leave a kind comment. And if you wish, subscribe to be here for the next unhurried tradition we explore together. End of script. Sweet dreams.